All rise. Oyez, oyez, oyez. Silence is commanded by this honorable commission. All those having business, draw near.
Thank you, and first of all, let me welcome all of you here. And if you will, please check your cell phones. All right, before we sit back down, please check your cell phone. Make sure we in compliance, because he says silence. I don't want the sheriff, the deputy to go home with a full pocket, all right? With that having been said, you may be seated. We're so happy to have with us Pastor Brian Parish, who began leading the fellowship at Pooler First Baptist Church in 2017. He completed his undergraduate work at Liberty University in 2005 and earned 2 master's degrees. He's originally from South Georgia and has served in churches in Georgia and in Florida. He is married and the father of 4 wonderful children, and we are so happy to invite Pastor Parish to come to the podium, and he will lead us in our inspiration and our invocation. Good morning.
My goal this morning is to do 2 things. Number 1, be honest. And number 2, to challenge you and to encourage you this morning. I'm actually not supposed to be here. This morning I'm supposed to be 20 foot up a tree, waiting for free groceries and home decorations to walk by. But our schedules got mixed up, and I'm thankful for the opportunity to be here this morning and to share with you from the Word of God. I want to talk to you about something this morning that we all have, that we all struggle with, that we all fall into. But I want to talk to you this morning about how your thoughts, they matter. Ralph Waldo Emerson has famously said, you sow a thought and you reap an action. You sow an action, you reap a habit. You sow a habit, you reap a character. And you sow a character and you reap a destiny. My papa used to say that you are today where your thoughts have brought you. And you will be tomorrow where your thoughts take you. Your thoughts, they matter. The Bible says in Proverbs 23, verse 7, "For as a man thinks, so is he." You know, we spend most of our time making decisions. Not even making a decision is making a decision. One of the things I like to say is to choose not to choose is to choose. So I want to ask you this morning, what do you think about? Where do your thoughts go? What do you focus on most of your time? You know, the Bible says that God has given us all that we need for life and godliness. And we often find that in His Word. So I want to direct you this morning to a passage from 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 5 that says this. It says, "We are destroying speculations and every lofty thing raised up against the knowledge of God. And we are taking every thought captive to the obedience of Jesus Christ." In this passage, as a Baptist preacher, I'm commanded to give you 3 points. Point number 1 is this. We are told to destroy every speculation and every lofty thing raised up against Christ. The word destroy here, it literally means to tear it down, to pull it down with force. Like a military breaking down a fortification, we demolish every argument that is incorrect and that speaks falsely of Jesus Christ. The military analogy continues, though, as we are told not just to destroy speculations, but to take captive thoughts. To take captive is to take control over. Your thoughts are now to be considered a prisoner, if you will, according to the passage. And I think it's a good word this morning to say this and to remind us all that we control our thoughts. Our thoughts do not control us. The last thing we're called to do is to take every thought captive to the obedience of Jesus Christ. So as we begin to focus our thoughts positively towards Christ, we are, as the NIV says, it says we are to take captive every thought to make it obedient to Jesus Christ. This means His will and His ways are right and we should follow them. Following Christ becomes a decision of the will that we begin to live our lives forward towards. So let me ask you one more time this morning. What do you think about? Where does your mind go? What are you allowing your mind to think on? Does God see a clean mind or a corrupt mind? Are you controlling your thoughts, or are your thoughts controlling you? If we're going to do this, we're going to need a filter. We're going to need a guide. We're going to need something to point us in the correct direction. And I want to share a passage, one last passage with you from Philippians chapter 4, verse 8. And I've got 5 minutes, and I've never preached a 5-minute sermon in my life. But I want to tell you a quick story. When my little girl was born, we had just had a miscarriage, and we found out we were having a little girl, and we were at God's favorite home decor, Hobby Lobby. And we were walking around trying to figure out what we were going to put in her nursery. What when she opens her little eyes, what do we want her to see? And I came across this little plaque that had this verse on it. And I was like, Cody, my wife's name's Cody. I was like, I think we need to buy this one. And she was like, she's looking at it. And she's like, no, I don't think this is going to match our decor. And this isn't the direction that we want to go in. And she looked up at me, and I'm a grown man, Southern raised, crying in Hobby Lobby. And I told my wife, I said, when my little girl wakes up, I want her to read this passage, and I want her to live her life in this direction. Here's what it says. It says, finally, brethren, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is of good repute, if there is any excellence in anything worthy of praise, dwell on these things. I want to encourage you this morning. Your thoughts, they matter. Your decisions matter. Y'all have a wonderful opportunity to serve Savannah, Georgia, and your thoughts, they matter. Would we all stand together? And let's pray. Father, we thank you, Lord, so much for another opportunity, God, to live upon your earth and, Lord, to draw breath. Lord, we know that every good and perfect thing comes from above. Lord, it's all from you, God. You have been kind to us, God. You've been gracious, Lord. You've been merciful. And Father, we thank you for an opportunity, Lord, to live together, Lord, to dwell in unity. God, to love one another, Lord, to make the most of every opportunity. But Father, I pray that you'd help us, Lord, this morning, God, to take our thoughts captive. Lord, not to let our minds wander, or Lord, to not make decisions. God, you put us in places, given us opportunities, Lord, to make decisions, Lord, not just for the betterment of our families, God, but for other families as well. And Father, we thank you, Lord, for Lord, that you don't leave us alone, but God, your word tells us you'll never leave us, God. You'll never forsake us, Lord. You'll walk with us. So, Lord, I just pray wisdom over this room, God. I pray that you dwell here, God, that your spirit, Lord, would speak to hearts, and Father, that you would do a work in us, God, that would bless other people. But, Lord, we would be remiss not to thank you, Lord, for the greatest blessing that you've ever given us, God. Lord, you demonstrated your great love for us, Lord, that while we were sinners, Lord, Jesus Christ died in our place. And Father, I just pray that you'd help us, Lord, to do those things, Lord, that please you, Lord, to do those things that honor you, because you and you alone are worthy of praise. God, we love you. Pray these things in Jesus' name and for his sake. Amen.
Amen. Please join us in the pledge.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. And thank you, Pastor Parish, for being here with us and for bringing us your words of inspiration. We cannot pay you, but we gave you our appreciation of your inspiring words, and we take that and go forward. God bless you and God keep you is our prayer. Roll call.
Chester A. Ellis, Chairman.
Present.
Kenneth A. Adams, District 8, Vice Chairman.
Present.
Helen L. Stone, District 1, Chairman Pro Tem. Larry Gator Rivers, District 2.
Present.
Bobby Lockett, District 3.
Here.
Patrick K. Farrell, District 4.
Here.
Tanya Milton, District 5.
Present.
Aaron Whiteley, District 6.
Here.
Dean Kicklighter, District 7.
Thank you. At this time, I'm going to ask you to join me as we pay homage and remembrance of one who served on this board for a while here in Chatham County, as well as served on the school board. That's Commissioner Lori Brady in her passing. This week, we have had the flags at all the county buildings at half-mast, and we just ask right now that we take out a moment of silence. Father, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven is our pleasure. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. At this time, we're going to call on Commissioner Whiteley, who should lead us in our first proclamation.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right, so this will be a proclamation recognizing October as Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And it reads as such: whereas the Chatham County Board of Commissioners recognizes that every one of our residents deserves to live a life free from domestic violence and abuse, and through this proclamation, we pledge to ensure that victims of domestic violence know they are not alone. And whereas home should be a place of warmth, unconditional love, safety, and peace. However, tragically, for many Americans, these are blessings that are tarnished by violence and fear. And Safe Shelter received 1,445 crisis calls as a result. And whereas domestic violence touches the lives of Americans of all ages, leaving a devastating impact on women, men, and children of every background and circumstance, making their home a place of fear, hopelessness, and desperation. And for 43 years, Safe Shelter has provided safe, temporary shelter for domestic violence victims and their children. And whereas domestic violence destroys an individual's security and dignity, prevents individuals from reaching their full potential, and cause them to suffer grave financial, physical, and psychological losses, which required the response of Chatham County Police to respond to 1,044 domestic disturbances calls, and there were 58 domestic violence-related aggravated assaults. Now therefore, I, Chester Ellis, Chairman on behalf of the Chatham County Board of Commissioners, do hereby proclaim October 2022 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month in Chatham County, and encourage all citizens to be good neighbors in identifying and promptly reporting incidences of domestic violence, in witness whereof I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of Chatham County, Georgia, to be affixed this the 23rd day of September. This the 7th day of October. 2022. Thank you.
All right, let me call upon the Executive Director from Safe Shelter.
I don't believe Miss Tony's here this morning, but
Okay.
Daniel Jenkins on the board of Safe Shelter.
All right.
We thank you for that proclamation and recognition. The mission of Safe Shelter is prevention of domestic violence, protection, and change. That's prevention of the violence, protection of victims, and change in the lives in our community, the lives affected by it, and our community ourselves. That's not an easy mission, but it's a necessary mission. And we invite each and every one of you, everyone listening to me today, to participate personally, to call the shelter, see how you might be able to assist us. It's a mission that we could use more hands. But we thank you for your recognition this morning. Anything else? No. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Well, we thank you all for the work you do, because we know that your work is volunteer work. And so to give your time and your effort, we greatly appreciate it. You want me to come down and take a picture? Is that what I'm getting a signal for? At this time, we'll call on Commissioner Farrell for the Montgomery Athletic Association.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we have a proclamation today to present to the Montgomery Athletic Association. This association goes back to its beginning in the Montgomery area, which is near Pinpoint, Georgia. If some of the folks may not be familiar with where Montgomery is, it's just down the street from Pinpoint. They were one of the first. The story is that I've heard over the decades is that they had the first electric light field in Chatham County, 1942, and so that was a big accomplishment back in those days, especially in the midst of a world war. So with no further ado, it gives me great pleasure to read this proclamation. Whereas, unable to receive funding due to its remote location, Montgomery Athletic Association was formed in October of 1942 as an organization providing recreational opportunity for all ages. And whereas, Montgomery Athletic Association focused on building its community during a time when many men and women left their homes to serve during World War II and serves as an anchor during uncertain times. Whereas, Montgomery Athletic Association functions in partnership with community members, providing opportunities to strengthen the community through fitness activities, social activities, and charitable support for community members in need of assistance. Whereas, Montgomery Athletic Association has remained strong and has served its community by hosting many church ladies softball leagues in the 1970s, 80s, and 90s, and provides a practice field for Little League teams when available fields were at a minimum. And whereas Montgomery Athletic Association has provided the grounds for church outings to include Sweetfield of Eden Baptist Church, Ferguson Avenue Baptist Church, and many others. Now therefore, Chester A. Ellis, Chairman, on behalf of the Chatham County Board of Commissioners, does hereby proclaim Saturday, October 8th, 2022, as Montgomery Athletic Association Day in Chatham County, and urges all citizens to join as they celebrate their 80th anniversary on October 8th, 2022, from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. on their grounds located at 10155 Ferguson Avenue. So I'd like to present this proclamation and have the representatives from the Montgomery Athletic Association to please come to the podium. And so if you could introduce yourselves and tell us your position with Montgomery, and then we'd like to hear from you.
Okay. My name's Clyde Sturgis. I'm the current president of the Montgomery Athletic Association.
I'm Judy Sturgis, the secretary of the association, and his wife.
She's the boss.
I'm Deborah Briggs, and I'm the treasurer of the association.
I'm Christy Como, and I'm the event coordinator.
Wayne Noah, previous president.
First, we'd like to thank the commission for this recognition. We are in the process of trying to reestablish Montgomery Athletic Association as a neighborhood athletic field. We are in the process of quite a bit of expansion to include a walking trail, a new ball field, so a disc golf course, a pond for fish where we can have some tournaments for the little kids, and just trying to make it more community friendly, trying to get a place for the Montgomery residents to have an athletic opportunity. And I'd like for Christy, if she would, just to tell us a little bit about the event that we are having tomorrow. I'd love to see all of y'all come out and visit with us. Bring the kids. It's going to be quite an event.
So tomorrow we have 50 local vendors that have decided to come out and support us. We have everything from photographers to jewelry to candles to homemade soaps. I'm sure I'm going to forget somebody. There's somebody who's making some handmade knives that are really cool for display. And a lot of the people that I'm meeting, they don't have a Facebook presence. They don't have an online presence. They're truly your local heart of the community, and it's things you can't buy online. So unless you come out, you're not going to have the opportunity to see it. But on top of that, you're going to have, we have a couple of bouncy houses. We have lots of games from cornhole and horseshoes and a big checkerboard, you know, lots of things just to kind of get out and have a good time. Hay rides, face painting. There's a vintage car showing. There's really a lot going on tomorrow, 10 to 3.
And I understand there may be some food trucks or some,
We are, the fire department is actually going to be cooking hot dogs and hamburgers. So we'll have those combos available for just $5. So it's super affordable for families. And Kona Ice will be out, and CNC Peanut Factory, so we'll have a boiled peanut truck. So a few different things.
okay, so, yeah, if you're gonna have it during the lunch hour, you gotta have some.
Gotta have
Some
food,
good food.
for sure.
All right, well, let me, come down and present this proclamation to you. I don't
They
know,
have
is there one,
Yeah, isn't there one on
is there one on the
yeah,
podium?
there's one on the podium. You can go down and take the picture with.
So I'd like to make this presentation to the president and board. Appreciate y'all coming down and looking at everything.
Thank you so very much, and we hope that tomorrow brings joy and happiness throughout the community. And I can boast about this, though. I used to come out to Montgomery to play against the fellows from the Anderson boys and the Wigster boys from Pinpoint. We used to beat them all the time in baseball. I had a good curveball during that time. Now I look at good curveballs, but thank you, and we understand, all right? Thank you, appreciate it.
All right, thank you. And
At this time, we're going to call Dr. Michael Toomey of Georgia Southern, who will bring us.
There we go. Mr.
It's on the screens because it's not here now. See, check with. All right. We've got it in front of us. I was just talking about. The audience have it up there? Okay, all righty.
Okay.
Good.
Tell me everything. Just open the ignition.
There we go.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to present some research findings that were generated by students enrolled in a course called Regional Economics on the campus, on the Armstrong campus here in Savannah of Georgia Southern University. We took on as a project an attempt to provide an overview of the effects of COVID-19 on the county's economy and various facets. We can only give you a few glimpses in the time that we have about the far-reaching effects of this pandemic on our regional economy and other aspects as they may touch on the county budget. So I'd like to introduce, I'm going to turn it over to the students for the presentation. In order of presentation, Jacob Nielsen will start us off, Kimberly Trin will follow, and Alexander Kirby will bring us up, and then I'll come back in and kind of wrap things up for us. So I'll turn it over to Jacob Nielsen this time.
All right.
Good morning, Chairman Ellis and Commissioners.
Good morning.
First, I'd like to address the visible patterns between the first two charts that we see here. The spikes in these charts signify when new variants of COVID began affecting Chatham County in both confirmed cases and deaths respectively. These indicators begin to show an idea of the economic impact in the county. To the right of that chart, which shows the amount of time employment, which is charted in blue, was recorded to be below trend, which is shown in orange. During this project that will be presented to you, we are focusing on the time that we spent within that gap between the trend and where employment actually was. Now to direct your attention to the bottom of the slide here, we see that unemployment rate rose from 4 to 16%, resulting in 255,000 worker months lost, as well as $1.5 billion lost in the production of goods and services. Also lost was 8% of 1 year's total output of goods and services. Over to the right, you'll see the effects of COVID compared between logistics and hospitality. You'll notice that while logistics only briefly operated under trend, hospitality took a much larger and more sustained hit as we experienced lower figures in tourism during this time. You'll also notice that manufacturing suffered a much larger loss given a high productivity per worker. I'd like to call your attention again to that 8% loss I mentioned earlier. When we compare that to the Georgia 9% loss and the United States 16% loss, we can see that Chatham County has done well to recover quickly. Now shifting from losses in goods and services, Kimberly Trin will take over and speak about other issues facing the county.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
COVID changed the way that people behaved. Right after COVID hit, people spent more time at home than at work. This is shown in the middle image. Businesses adopted to allow their workers to remain productive while at home. While looking at the graph in the top right, we can see that there are fewer people going into workplaces. So it went from about 5 days a week to 3.5 days a week. Corresponding to that, underneath that graph, we see a decrease in usage of public transportation. However, looking at the top left graph, there's an increase in park visitation. With an increased amount of park usage, it can imply greater wear and tear on the park's infrastructure, which could lead to a higher maintenance and replacement cost for the county budget. I would like to note that park visitation also includes increased visitation to Tybee Island beaches. In addition to stress placed on park infrastructure, stress is also apparent in other aspects in the county budget. Next slide, please. For example, additional stress is placed in the county emergency medical service system. I'd like to point your attention to the image at the bottom right. The wall time is defined as how long an EMS personnel waits to release a patient to the hospital. The wall time prior to COVID basically is non-existent. However, currently the wall time is about 10 hours per week. This creates stress on the remaining crews on the road. Also, if we look at the image on the left, we can see that the call volume for EMS increased 31% since 2020. Fundamentally, both of these issues are tied to the substitution of the 911 and EMS service to cover the staffing shortages in home healthcare sector and at the hospitals. Stress is also being placed at the county sheriff's office. Before I go into more detail about this slide, I apologize for the typo. Where it says days underneath the far right image, it should be on a monthly basis. COVID resulted in a reduction of the inmate population, as more people who would have been incarcerated were actually bonded out. From 2019 to 2020, the average number of felony inmates decreased by 20%, and the misdemeanor inmates decreased by 80%. Inmate population declined at the same time as the number of vacant positions in the sheriff's office increased, more than doubling since 2019. As a result, the increased vacancies are correspondingly related to increased funds budgeted over time. The budget increased from about $3,500,000 in 2020 to $430,000 per month within the past 6 months. With the vacancies rising, there is an increase in overtime budgeting. Again, I apologize for the typo, but the budgeting is on a monthly basis and not a daily basis. With that being said, the OT per inmate increased from $265 per month to $365 per month. I would also like to note that this is the sheriff's office total overtime and not just the overtime budgeted for correctional officers. I would also like to point out that we are only providing a glimpse of the effects of COVID within the county. Other factors we considered but were unable to include in the presentation include increase in delayed caseload on the judicial system, increased mental health concerns within the county, increased poverty in the county as lower income households were disproportionately affected by business activity closures and restrictions, and adverse effects on school learning outcomes. However, not all impacts of COVID have adverse implications for the county budget. I will turn it over to Alexander Kirby to provide more details about that.
Good morning. Good morning. So, as Ms. Trin alluded to, when looking at home prices within the region, we observed since 2018, a price for a typical mid-tier home has increased by more than $100,000, going from about $180,000 to $290,000 more recently. In percentage terms, the annual appreciation rate on single-family homes has exceeded 20% since late 2021, with the most recent quarter data showing appreciation rates increasing near 28%, all of which may contribute to great returns to our overall wealth but also towards housing affordability concerns. With that said, over the aforementioned time period, favorable implications regarding home values and the county's property tax digest shows an increase from $11.5 billion to $15 billion. And in the absence of any change to the millage rate, the county should expect increased property tax revenue. Next, we'll be looking at retail sales tax. On the graph on the left, we can see the retail sales tax collections have increased by 40% since 2019, increasing from about $8 million per month to about $11.5 million per month. What we observed, as well as I'm sure many people here can attest to, is during the pandemic, consumer purchasing behavior changed from purchasing fewer services to purchasing more goods or things, or more taxable products, essentially. Couple this with the easing of COVID restrictions over time, we also observed a released wave of pent-up demand. And on the right, we can see the results of some of this demand in the form of increased travel and tourism and activity in the unincorporated portion of Chatham County. Chatham County was able to capitalize on this in the form of the hotel bed tax, where we observed increases of more than 40%, which accounts for $180,000 per month, or excuse me, $180,000 revenue per month. Despite being around for only the past 6 months or so, it is worth noting about 40% of that $180,000 per month came from a bed tax that was generated from short-term vacation rentals. So with that said, I'd like to turn it back over to Dr. Toma for closing remarks. Thank you.
So these are, excuse me, these are our 3 student presenters. The research team included 8 students in total that contributed to this project. So I would like to bring it back to a comment that Jacob brought forward earlier, that the Chatham County economy basically suffered a $1.5 billion hit while workers stayed at home or were not in the office or doing their normal daily activities on the job. So that's about a $1.5 billion hit while the economy in Chatham County was operating below trend. Now we have reattained our pre-trend COVID path, so that Chatham County's economy is now back on trend, and that is outperforming the state of Georgia, which is still below trend by about 100,000 jobs. So their 9% hit is going to continue to increase. And for the national economy, the U.S. economy is still below trend with respect to its employment level by about 6 million jobs. So that 16% hit for the U.S. economy will continue to increase in size as well. The point being that Chatham County's economy has outperformed both the state of Georgia and the United States as a whole, primarily because we're diversified, well diversified in port activity, logistics, manufacturing growth, and the recovery of the tourism economy. So with that, I'd like to conclude our presentation.
All right, let me open the floor now for any commissioners, and I see Commissioner Lockett has a question, Commissioner Whiteley, and then Commissioner Middleton. Commissioner Lockett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Tomey, this is a very informative report. I would like to know, how could I get a personal copy of it?
We can make a copy
Written
of
copy?
of the PowerPoint, certainly, absolutely.
Thank you very much.
All right, Commissioner Whiteley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Toma and students, seriously impressive. You know, a lot of great information here, and you know, definitely looks good. I do want to say we're blessed to have Georgia Southern as part of our county, and we're also blessed to have Savannah State University and SCAD. So just as we are seeing the business analysis, I'd love to see a social analysis from Savannah State, maybe an art analysis of some sort from SCAD, just to showcase the great people that we have and the great professors that we have in our institutions here. One thing I wanted to kind of make a note of that I thought was incredibly interesting, and I think that it really touches on the overall challenges that our county is facing, is when Ms. Tren spoke about the wall times at the hospitals. And I think it's important to say, not only does that stress hospital staff, but that's also stretching our ambulance staff very thin. So when we're frustrated because ambulances aren't getting somewhere as fast as we want them to, we have to kind of understand that there are multiple factors in play, and hospital wall time is one that a lot of people don't even know about. When ultimately an ambulance has to sit and wait until they can transfer custody of that patient, so to speak, to hospital staff. So I think it's just, I think there's a need for us to say that, because our essential workers, as we learned during COVID, which are our hospital staffs, our ambulance staff, are extremely stretched thin right now. And so I seen a sign that said, we're all stretched thin. Don't be mean to the guys who showed up to work. You know, I think we should all take that in. But again, very impressive presentation. Thank you so much for it.
Thank you.
Commissioner Middleton?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to commend you as well. That was an awesome job. And did the kids do the research?
The students did the research.
That's awesome.
I just pointed them in the right direction. This is all them.
That's awesome. That was great. What a great presentation. And I know this was an experience for you to actually present. Have you done that before? Yeah, but you did a great job. Great job. Of course, yeah, now Dr. Thomas done this for many years, so it kind of just rolls off his. But you guys did an awesome job. Thank you. And that was great material.
I think you need to give them the background. When Dr. Tomey and I first talked about this, there was no template anywhere that he could follow, all right? So he had to go to his students and create it, what you see before you, okay? Because we needed to know going forward, we needed to know how we can plan better for what's coming next, all right? And so that was one of the reasons I reached out to ask you, did we have that? And for all of Chatham County to know, this kind of presentation and this kind of data was nowhere, all right? So they had to go in the classroom and create that, and I think we ought to give them a round of applause for their creativity.
That was awesome.
Right? And you said there are 8 members to the team?
8.
The other 5 that are not here, just tell them how much we appreciate them looking into the impact of COVID on Chatham County. Because a lot of times, we see things, but we don't understand. But this can make us understand and get us to know where we're going from here. So listen, I just thank you and applaud you, and I just hope that we can take this to the next level. You all tell us what that level is, and let us go to the next level, because I see it as helping to better all of Chatham County citizens when we have the data, all right? And I'm a data-driven person. I get that information, and I got to tell folks, I don't make decisions until I get all the facts, and the facts are what's counting. So let me again congratulate you for taking on this task, and for the students to take on this task and create your template. And I just hope that all over the country they take this template and start working with it, because that's the first thing he said. Let me reach out and see if any researchers have done this, and there was a 0. All right, so they created this, and you need to know that these students, those 8 students, along with Professor Tomey, created this for Chatham County. All right, thank you so much for what you're doing. Any final words?
Thank you for the opportunity just to share our findings with you.
Just thank you for, and when you want to get all of them and bring all 8 of them, we would appreciate it, because they need to know how much we appreciate what they have done for us, because we can take this and study, because SARS came and COVID came. We don't know what's coming next, but we need to know what the effects are on Chatham County, and it makes life better for all of us. Again, thank you so much for taking up the challenge.
You're very welcome.
Appreciate it.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
We don't have any chairman's items or commissioner items. We don't have any table items, which takes us to items for individual action. The first is to vote on the board appointment. And I'm sorry, I cannot pronounce that first name.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the board appointment of Mr. Kewan Drayton.
All right, Kewan, okay. I didn't want to mess up their name, all right? There's a motion, may I have a second? Second?
Second.
Properly motion and second that we appoint Mr. Kewan Drayton to the Zoning Board of Appeal. Ready for the question? Please cast your votes. Okay. All right, going on to number 2, to request approval of the following budget amendments and transfer for fiscal year 2022. In the Hotel Motel Fund, increase revenues and expenditures, $113,000, and transfer funds into the Tourism Department budget. 2, in the General Fund, M&O, appropriate $350 fund balance to the Communications Operations budget. 4, in the General Fund, M&O, Special Service District, Special Revenue, Internal Service, Capital Improvement, and Enterprise Fund, increase revenues and expenditures as documented on the resolution. 3, in the SPLOST 4 Fund, transfer project fund as listed in attachment 4. 5, in the SPLOST 5 Fund, transfer project funds as listed in attachment 6, FY 2023. 1, in the Multiple Grant Fund, increase revenue and expenditures $1,600,000 for the National Archives grant. B, increase revenue and expenditures $9,000 for the ACCG Health Grant. Is there a motion?
I so move.
Second.
Properly motion and second that the request for approval be granted. Are you ready for the question? Please cast your vote. Thank you. Number 3, let's go to the bi-monthly report from Chief Hadley.
Well, good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
I'm glad to see y'all. I'm glad we dodged a bullet with Hurricane Ian. That's nice. I know a lot of folks, including myself, had family and friends down in Florida, in Southwest Florida, and I'm happy to say all my folks are good and safe. So I'm glad everyone else, hope everyone else fared as well as I did. So a lot of thanks to SEMA and their staff for getting us prepared, and Dennis does a great job, and Randall and everybody down there works really hard during that time. And a lot of people came in and worked even 24 hours straight just to make sure that we were setting ourselves up for success if we happen to incur something. So thankfully we didn't, but a lot of thanks go out to Dennis and his team. So.
Speak up.
Speak up. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, speak up. Speak loud. I was trying to signal you without saying
I'm sorry.
it.
Just yell at me. That's what my wife does. So. All right, thank you. And we'll get going on the presentation, and then after the presentation, I'll give an update on our missing 20-month-old and answer any of y'all's questions if you have any.
Okay.
First graph obviously shows our Part 1 crimes for the year. We have 23 total rapes as compared to 27 in 2020 and 30 in 2021, so that's on the positive side. 30 total robberies year to date, 31 and 50 in the previous year, so another on the positive side. 126 total aggravated assaults as compared to 92 in 2020 and 140 in 2021, so it's kind of went down and up and down. Shoplifting incidents are up 151 as compared to last year. That would account for our increase in crime, which is 2.4%. As compared to 2021. Don't know what to attribute that to. I think there's a somewhat of a different approach relative to prosecution. That's not casting any dispersions, but 151 out of 1,300 total that's about 10% of our Part 1 crimes are from shoplifting alone. Obviously, we have some big Walmart stores within the unincorporated Chatham County, and they tend to be pretty active.
Could you tell us a little bit more about the difference in how shoplifting is currently looked at compared to previous prosecution activities that were common in Chatham County?
Well, in a discussion, no, I have not talked to DA Jones just for the sake of clarification, but in our discussion in our crime meeting, it's my understanding that some of the shoplifting cases, if there's an apprehension made and the property is returned, then they won't go forward with prosecution. They'll drop in the charges. or if there's certain items that are taken, whether it be, you know, food, baby items, things of that nature that are more from a basic needs perspective, there may be a different viewpoint in terms of prosecution as opposed if you're stealing a TV or something like that. So that's from my staff and them articulating that to me, but just for fairness and fairness to the DA, I haven't had that conversation with her specifically, so. All right, moving on. I'm sorry.
Hold on. Commissioner Milton wanted to go back one slide.
Are these local mom and pop stores, or are they shoplifting at the mall, or?
These are mainly, in our jurisdiction, it's the Walmart. So we got the one on 17, and then we have the one at Montgomery Crossroads. That accounts for the lion's share of our shoplifting arrests here in unincorporated Chatham.
So when they return the items, like you said, they don't go any further, is that something that's now a trend because people know that they won't go any further? Is that encouraging for them to do?
We could surmise that. I mean, we could, you know, kind of come to that conclusion. We'd have to, you know, that probably require a little bit further analysis or maybe some discussions, but that's just from what I'm getting from my detectives and my staff. So
Because that's a pretty big jump, don't you think?
that's a very large jump. I mean, anytime you would see you know, well, let's go back to the year before. So you had, so far in 2022, year to date, we had 326 as opposed to 175. So you're almost double. So you're looking at a 45% jump in one Part 1 crime category. I mean, it begs further analysis. It begs some hard questioning in terms of why that would be, particularly in that type of category. Trying to figure out, you know, why that is. So.
Is it the homeless, you think?
There's some of that. I wouldn't want to attribute that just to that group of individuals. I think it's probably a smattering of that, a differential prosecution. There may be some, you know, economic factors that go into that. And we could also, that Walmart has increased their asset protection, their loss prevention staff, and they're making more arrests than maybe they did previously. So I think that's a question to ask. So I think those are some of the things that we need to ask ourselves to try to drill down on why that large increase. But a 45 to almost 50% increase in that type of category is something that needs to be
Thank you.
analyzed. Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Wyman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chief, to your knowledge, well, first of all, this shoplifting, is that considered a misdemeanor?
Yes.
Right, and then.
Well, hold on, let me
Unless it's
let me
over
back
a
up.
certain amount,
There's a
right?
certain, I believe it's $500. If it's over $500, it would be a felony. If it's under $500, it'd be a misdemeanor.
So felony shoplifting is still being prosecuted, theoretically?
Theoretically, yes. That would be my assumption.
Assumption, right.
Yeah.
And so I do think it's important for us to note that another thing that we have to consider is that misdemeanors are not being jailed. Therefore, the deterrence of being arrested for shoplifting for a misdemeanor is also something. So I just want to make sure that we're painting a clear picture to the public that there's multiple factors that are
I would agree, yeah,
associated with that.
for sure.
Thank you.
And Commissioner Farrell?
Well, I find this trend in the unincorporated area troubling, and both of the points that have been brought out today do not bode well for predicting the future number of occurrences. So I think it's time that the decision makers in the law enforcement and judicial community come together and project where this is going and take appropriate action to stem it and reverse it.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned, Chief, that your detectives told you about that, what the DA was doing, but you yourself have not been in communication with her about that.
That is correct. I'm
so-
upfront about that. I said I'm not
Right.
trying to cast any dispersions. I'm just
I
getting
think that's
feedback
the-
from my staff.
Yeah, I think that's to Commissioner Farrell's point. I think they need to come together, and I'm wondering if, do you share this kind of report with the DA so that you all can kind of come, and the judges, so that you can kind of, and as sheriff as well too, so that y'all can kind of have a come to the meeting kind of mindset as to how, because that is a large jump. And that should be, it should be alarming and disturbing to us. And so if what you're doing is not deterring folks from doing it, then maybe you're not, you know. And so, but you have to have that conversation with her, right?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I think we also have to, to Commissioner Farrell's point, we also have to have that conversation amongst ourselves in reference to who's going to jail. Jail is a big deterrent, and jail is also a big expense. With $74 a day for an inmate. So again, I don't think there's any easy answer, and I just want to be clear that I don't, just for the record, I'm not trying to lay blame on anybody. It is a comprehensive issue that we have, and again, as to Commissioner Farrell's point, if we don't do something about it, it's only going to continue to get worse. And this is in the heart of my district. I got a Walmart in my district, so I know exactly what's going on. But again, I think there's multiple cogs in this wheel. Just want to make that clear, because I've seen some aspersions that have been made in some cases, and I'm not sure that everybody has all of the information.
No, and I would agree with you, Commissioner Wiley. I mean, this goes beyond just shoplifting. I mean, you get into criminal trespassing and some other low-level misdemeanors, but they are very problematic for business owners and things of that nature. Sheriff's understaffed. You can only have so many, folks there, so they can properly manage, what they have. So, I mean, I know he's taken a conservative view relative to who he, inputs into the jail because of staffing, economics, things of that nature. So when we can, we make an arrest, we process them, we fingerprint them, and then we walk them out the door, within a couple hours afterwards. So, many of those offenders, have the mindset that's not much of a deterrent. Okay, I got a ticket and I got to go to court 6 months from now, but I'm going to go back to doing what I'm going to do. So, those are the conversations that we have, with business owners and amongst staff. So it does beg, to the chairman's suggestion, a greater conversation around, how we're approaching, some of these issues from a countywide perspective. And I think it's going to take the DA, the sheriff, and local law enforcement to have those conversations and see what works best with all the other considerations that we have to deal with.
Commissioner Adams?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chief, you just mentioned the other police agencies. Are they also having the same problems?
I don't know that for sure. Okay. I could make that assumption, but I can't say I've talked to them, Pooler, Bloomingdale, Tybee, or anyone else, or Savannah.
And that's why I say you got to pull all of them together, so you can get that data from everybody. So, because it affects the whole county.
Yes, it does.
And our main focus is the unincorporated areas, and we know the hotspots in our areas are the 2 Walmarts. So, we have to stretch out.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, go ahead, Chief.
All right, thank you for the questions. Moving on, this just reflects the Part 1 crimes for the 10-week period, July 24th through October 1st, in the various beats throughout unincorporated Chatham County. Moving on, I wanted to talk a little bit about transparency for several reasons. One, that's one of our foundational pieces, something I pride ourselves on, that we try to be, to the extent that we can, an open book with many various aspects. In fact, I was asked to serve on a panel in Dallas next week at the IACP relative to this topic specifically. So just kind of wanted to go through a little menu of items that we feel that we are very forthcoming as a county and from the Chatham County Police Department. Our crime data, our statistics and maps are posted to our website. Crime alerts are posted, whether it be mail thefts, thefts from autos, scams, things of that nature. Our school speed zone cameras, our ongoing awareness campaigns, specific times for speed reduction posted and communicated to the public, a monthly report of violations posted to our website, notifications available with Waze app. So if you download that app, you will be notified when you're entering a school speed zone area, so you can slow down and won't be susceptible to a ticket. Mr. Whiteley is sitting there smiling, so he must have downloaded it, I think. My daughter did. Our SOPs, all procedures are posted to the website and updated when changed. Our use of force procedures are highlighted and out there for everyone to see. We have a fillable form available on our website for our records request, our strategic plan. Community surveys were conducted, process and final plans shared with media and posted. News media has a 24/7 access to the department representative for major crimes. All information possible released without compromising the investigation. Press releases and social media updated frequently with pertinent information. Our social media information posted regularly. We receive about 12,000 comments annually. And many of those, and I didn't realize this till I had a one-on-one with my PIO a couple weeks ago, many of those comments require a response, or they ask for a response. And our ethic is try to respond to those responsibly to the extent that we can. Imagine having to manage, let's say, 10,000 comments a year. That's a lot of work for a single individual. And I was kind of taken aback by that number, that order of magnitude. And I'm certain our county PIO's office deals with the same thing. So there's a lot of work that goes on that we may not be readily, apparent to us. But a lot of folks reach out via social media and comments and whatnot, and we try to set the record straight or give them the information they want or answer their questions. And so that just takes a lot of time, energy, and effort on staff. And so I just want to highlight that and thank Betsy Nolan, my PIO, and all the PIOs in the county, because I'm certain they deal with the same, order of magnitude. Moving on to our favorite topic, school zone speed cameras. Our newest school zones went effective September 19th. It'll be in that grace period for 30 days, and then we'll go live with those. The new cameras at Hess on Whitfield, Southwest Elementary on 17, and St. James School, as you can see denoted there. Last year, 33,178 vehicles were speeding through school zones during this school day. That was 11 miles per hour or over the speed limit. So we didn't track anyone that was doing 7 or 8 or 9 or even 10. 24,700 of those were at Marsh Point Elementary and Coastal Middle School right there on Highway 80. This pie chart down to the left, 2,100 of those vehicles, or 6%, were 20 miles an hour over the speed limit in a school zone. 15 to 19 miles per hour over were 8,600, and 11 to 15 miles per hour over were 22,388, or 68% of those speeders. By comparison, though, by the end of the 2021-22 school year, speeding reduced by 90%. We get to that 90% by the benchmarks that were established prior to the implementation of the program. So it is working. It is reducing speed in the school zones, but we still have 33,000 motorists still speeding through the school zone. So we'll continue to provide updates and data as requested and as you may need them.
For the public's sake, could you let them know what time the camera's cut on and how it's posted so that there's no mistake in the traveling public as to when these cameras are active?
The cameras go live on any school day, not on the weekends, not on holidays, not when there's a day off of school, teacher planning day or anything like that. There's no violations that are cited during those times. An hour before school starts, and some school starts at different times, so those will be posted or are posted in those relative areas. During the flashing yellow in those school zones, the speed drops from 10 miles per hour below the posted speed limit. When the light is not flashing, it's the normal speed limit. The major thing that people need to understand is those cameras are on and active an hour before school, all the way through the school day, and an hour after. I think that's probably the biggest misconception, is that people look at it from, well, when school's going in the beginning of the morning and then being let in the afternoon, they don't understand or don't remember that the cameras are on all day, throughout the day.
And when it's flashing, what's the protocol for generating a ticket for a motorist?
So when it's flashing and it goes from, let's say if the speed limit is 35 and it goes to 25, you would get a ticket if you were doing 36 miles per hour.
So you still get plus 10?
Plus 10, yes, sir.
I think that think that clears it up pretty good.
Slow down, Allen, slow down.
So, are you?
Commissioner
Is
Milton.
it more, on speeding? I mean, we're talking right now about speeding in school zones. I've got 18-wheelers that are speeding down Little Neck Road and Bush Road. How can we deter that? What can we do to deter that? I've got video, I've got residents that sent me video of the trucks, and these are 18-wheelers going down, and it's a residential area. And they are a little done with it.
Upset, I understand. So there's a couple things that come to mind. Obviously, there's us, right? We can do speed enforcement with, to the extent that we can with the manpower that we have. Also, what I would also suggest, just like when I sent the letter to the trucking company that was using Girard as a training ground.
Right.
I ended up sending a registered letter to the company asking them not to do that and giving them reasons why. I think that kind of stopped that, if I'm not mistaken.
That did.
So if there's a particular company that those trucks belong to because they have a construction project out there, I would want to know, the foreman, the owner, or the manager. So, we can make personal contact and make a plea to them. Hey, look, your driver's got to slow down. We're in a residential area. We can come out here and write tickets, and for those individuals, because they have a CDL, getting a citation is much more impactful to them and how they make a living than perhaps, just the average everyday citizen that may get one.
So is it possible to increase your patrol during those early morning hours when they are moving?
It is. If you get me the location, or pretty much near the location, the time.
I'll send you the video too.
Send me the video, copy Michael and Linda on it. I'll make sure we get people out there, and we'll be out there to the extent that we can.
Very good. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Wiley?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And so with that, Chief, very interesting mix, right? A place like Bush Road's kind of interjurisdictional. You got City of Savannah and County, Little Neck also. What is our protocol when it comes to traffic enforcement in areas like that? Or who's patrolling, who's responsible for that?
Well, we all are,
Yeah.
quite frankly, because of some of those roads where you go from Savannah to unincorporated to Garden City or Bloomingdale, some of those places out there. One question is, do those jurisdictions have those roads registered as they're able to do speed enforcement? We have to identify which roads we have to apply for a permit to do speed enforcement on particular roads. Correct, John? So they may or may not have it, because they may have just such a small sliver of that road that they may have not have done that for some practical purposes. But what we can also do, if it's such a significant problem and visible problem, is request the assistance of GSP. They're a great partner. They help us tremendously whenever we ask. We have great relationships with them, and that's another resource for us if need be. They've helped us at the bridge project in Commissioner Lockett's jurisdiction. When we were low on staffing, they had sent some troopers out and they wrote some citations to try to slow the traffic down. So that's another avenue for us to pursue.
Okay. Well, I will ask Mr. Manager, is in understanding how West Chatham is expanding so widely, and that is one of the areas where we have those interjurisdictional roads. If we could just start kind of looking into some of that, having that discussion, who's going to be responsible if they need to get enforcement permits to help with the enforcement out there, because when I think of Little Neck and that New Hampstead development, which is going to, 5 years from now, going to be a lot of traffic. When I think about Bush Road, when I think about Fort Argyle, to some degree, we're going to run into that. So I'd like us to be proactive if at all possible, sir. Thank you.
Anything else? Let me ask this question, and I think this may go to the lawyer as well. Because he's a county officer, right? Doesn't he have the whole county within his jurisdiction?
Yes, sir. Technically, he can enforce speed limit anywhere in Chatham County.
Oh, okay.
He can enforce the law within Chatham County. The only difference is if he's in an incorporated area, he's gonna have to go with whatever the ordinance is under that.
And that, okay, that's what, okay.
And if they don't have a speed
But
permit.
I didn't think someone understood that that's,
And he's gotta have the authority to, typically what we do is we cover all the roads in unincorporated
Right.
Chatham County, and we go through the drill to get a permit to do that. We don't necessarily do that on Rogers Street in Pooler, for
Right.
example. Okay, so if you want to expand into that jurisdiction, which sometimes you're welcome and sometimes you're less welcome, you can do that.
yeah.
Thank you. Well, so the point I'm trying to make, though, I'm not talking about Rogers Street and Pooler.
Right.
I'm talking about like Little Neck, right? That's
Multi-jurisdictional.
in county, right?
Yeah.
That's one.
You don't know
Chatham.
when you're crossing the line.
You know, so
Yeah, I got exactly
and
what you mean.
The point I'm trying to make is not necessarily put all that on our police department's plate. What I'm saying is if it's multi-jurisdictional, we all should be sharing in that load. And so if that's a conversation that needs to be had with Savannah PD or Bloomingdale PD or whomever it may be, then let's start having those conversations now before we have 9,000 houses off of Little Neck and 1 million cars flying down, and we getting more than videos. We're getting, text messages, getting cursed out on social media, trying to keep up without a PIO department.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Anything else along those lines? All right, go ahead, Chief.
All right, good questions, thank you. Moving on, our next favorite topic, guns stolen from vehicles. So far this year in 2022, we've had 90 guns stolen from 77 vehicles. Only 11 of those were forced entry. 66 of those were from unlocked vehicles. Just on October 3rd in the Georgetown area, we had 2 guns stolen from one vehicle, one of those being an AK-47. This is absolutely ridiculous.
It is.
Now, I'm usually a pretty calm guy, but to have that type of weaponry unlocked in a vehicle and then to have it in the hands of someone that will either sell it to someone that will use it in a nefarious way is absolutely unacceptable. And I don't know who that person is that left that unlocked. That is completely irresponsible to do that. And so I can't even state it enough. We put signs in yards. We have done social media campaigns. We have sat here and discussed it amongst ourselves about the necessity of people to lock their vehicles and safe keep their weapons. And I would suspect that Savannah has twice as much as we do because of the population and they have more incidents. So this is just the trend since we started in 2018. 53, 84, 43, 73, 90. Let's do that. 163, let's see, 206, 84 is 290, 333, I might be a couple off, 333 weapons in just shy of 5 years. That's been reported. There's maybe some that were stolen that they didn't report to us because they didn't want us to know. So that's that many weapons just from unincorporated Chatham County that went out the door and onto the streets because people don't want to lock their car and when they have a weapon in it. Just unacceptable, completely.
And they don't want to report it either.
Correct.
Because it just happened in my neighborhood. All right. Somebody went in the unlocked car and stole a gun, and it turned out that the unlocked car, the gun was stolen. They stole from the thief. Who stole the gun? Who, when they got caught, the gun was stolen by all of them. So all of them went to jail, and that's in the city of Savannah. That's why you don't have that report.
Well,
Yes, sir.
Assistant County Manager Linda Kramer asked a question, can we cite them? That's been a discussion. I'm not sure that we can. And if we started doing that, what we wouldn't know, what it might deter is people even reporting them at all.
Right.
And then we wouldn't even know. And then we wouldn't be able to put them, if they have the serial numbers, to put them in as stolen and then recover them at some point down the line. So it's a fair question. It's a fair conversation. I think that's just, we'd have to put a lot of thinking to that.
Plus, we had to put the lawyers at work to find out if that's legal.
That's true, absolutely.
Wait a minute.
It's all over. Commissioner. It really isn't concentrated in one geographic area of unincorporated. It's kind of spread out throughout the county.
Commissioner Adams?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chief, how did you know about the AK-47? Did they report it stolen?
They did report it stolen, and so that's how we found out. And when we went over our yesterday, we have our crime meeting on Thursday mornings, you know, it's just shocking to me.
Commissioner Whiteley?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, so I do definitely hope, I'm saying this to our attorney, considering that Georgia now is constitutional carry, we've got to have some kind of recourse at some point to be able to try to encourage responsible gun ownership in some way or another. I'm a gun-toting guy, but I also know that it's my responsibility to make sure my guns are away from my children or not in my unlocked vehicle in my driveway and so on and so forth. And so I'd really like us to look into what options we have to actual encouragement of responsible gun ownership. That is not just a cheesy commercial campaign, you know. Let me not say cheesy, because I don't mean it like that, because we have had some campaigns like that. I'm not saying that they were cheesy, but the point I mean is we've got to find some kind of way, going right back into the vein of shoplifting, to try to deter some of this stuff, because, you know, these guns end up in the wrong hands. They end up shooting people, and then we want to point fingers at who's responsible. And I think here's an opportunity where we could try to be proactive, especially considering that constitutional carry has passed in the state of Georgia.
All right, Commissioner Rivers?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, Chief, the other day I was coming to the meeting, and a young kid was riding a bicycle with a weapon that long in his hand, and he could barely steer the bicycle because of the gun. And back to you, Mr. Aaron, what do you do in a case like that? You know, do you say something to this kid?
Nah, he wouldn't. Don't say nothing. No. Don't buy no water either. You just keep on going. Put it into my Chatham app.
I almost hit this kid because he was trying to steer his bicycle with this pistol in his hand. And I was speechless. I didn't know whether to call the cops or what, but I knew I wasn't going to say nothing to him. I knew that.
It was a child. Call the police.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't you be doing it. Call the police and report it so they can come up behind you or something, because you got to be careful what you say to people now. Don't want any of you to get in trouble. Anyone else? All right, Chief, go ahead.
All right, thank you, sir. Moving on. This is one aspect of our agency that you may not be aware of, but we administer the NIBIN program for Southeast Georgia, Chatham County Police Department. Every fire, and what that does is analyze shell casings. We assist Savannah PD, Bloomingdale, we assist any agency in Southeast Georgia that wants us to analyze their shell casings. We have the license for the machine. The ATF bestows that and trusts us to do that. NIBIN stands for the National Integrated Ballistic Information Network. Shell casings are collected at crime scenes, can be linked to each other or to casings from a known gun, thus linking incidents together or to a specific gun. So out there, if someone's a shooter, they're out there involved in multiple shootings, they haven't been caught yet, we may be able to identify a single weapon being responsible for shootings at multiple locations on different days. So that's a resource that we provide to the agencies here in Chatham County and Southeast Georgia. Just wanted to make you guys aware of it. I'm really proud of that program. Sergeant Scott Coleman spearheads that, and they work very, very hard to assist all the agencies here in Southeast Georgia. So just, if you didn't know, just wanted to make you aware of that aspect of our agency. So moving on, threat assessment. We do free threat assessment and active shooter training offered to local businesses. They can contact our training unit if somebody would like that training for their organization. We've conducted 3 or 4 of those over the last couple months, and we'll continue to do so as we go forward. We did have a community forum on mass violence. A lot of thanks to Tara and Scott MacGyver from CCPD for organizing that. Attendance wasn't what it should be. It was right before the hurricane. It was the day before we thought, so, but we went forward with it. We had a great discussion, and we'll continue on with these forums as we move forward, but just wanted to make y'all aware of that.
Before you leave that, though, excuse me, before you leave that, explain to them what the grant is and where it comes from.
Yeah.
Maybe Tara will need to come up and help you with that.
So we, several years ago, well, almost 2 years ago, just at 2 years ago, we got a $436,000 grant relative to setting up a TAM, a threat assessment network, in order to create a platform where information on threats of violence will all come to the same platform. We all work under different, in silos, we all have different records management systems, so that was one part of the grant. One was to provide training and resources to our various stakeholders and partners, which we have done. And we're gonna continue on with that work even as the grant expires here in October. My employee, Scott MacGyver, who will go back to working patrol, but he's also gonna take that on as an ancillary duty and continue on with that. So that'll also kind of go part and parcel with our new CAT RMS system, Central Square, which will help us all be on the same RMS, and we'll all be sharing the same information instead of being, you know, kind of segregated in our own systems. So that's something that's going to benefit public safety here in Chatham County tremendously. It doesn't get talked about a lot, but it is a tremendous resource, and the county has really picked up the ball and put some financial backing to that and human resources to that as well. So.
And that comes from the Department of Homeland Security.
Yes, sir. Did I get that right, Tara?
Yeah,
Okay.
we wanna make sure that they understand and they know. So we know where that $430,000 went.
Yes, sir.
And they check the balance sheet.
Well, I can tell you, she's gonna count for every nickel of it, I can tell you that, so.
Mr. Chair.
All right, hold on.
Chief, I would like to ask you,
Turn your mic on.
thank you. As far as these forums coming up, do you have a calendar, or we need to get in contact with you if we want it our?
If you'd like some information, just get with myself, and we'll organize something for you. This was the first one we had.
Okay.
And then we'll plan some more as we go forward.
I'll be in touch.
Okay, sir.
Commissioner
Thank
Adams.
you, Mr. Chair. Chief, you mentioned that it was expiring in October?
Yes, the grant expires in October. We've worked on this for 2 years.
Okay.
And so we'll continue the work with our own staffing. And, but yeah, the grant does expire.
Okay.
It might have already expired. December? Yeah.
Are we reapplying?
I think have we? I can't remember. There's so much going on.
So we have not reapplied. This opportunity has not been afforded to us again.
Okay,
But we did get a no-cost extension through the end of this year.
okay, thank you.
Thanks, Tara. All right, thank you. And so that's the end of my, any questions on my PowerPoint?
Presentation. Anybody? Okay, we covered all.
All right.
Okay, you can go ahead and give us something.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'd like to update the commission on our missing 20-month-old Quentin Simon. I'll try to capture what we've done so far. We've tried to be as communicative to the media as we can. He went missing on Wednesday morning, approximately 9:49 or 9:39 is when his mother called 911. We made the scene, did an initial assessment, got our drone out there as quick as possible, looking, because the initial report is that he wandered off. Over that span of time, we had aviation, mosquito control came out, helped us doing an aerial search. We set up a grid search, had volunteers show up. SEMA assisted us again as well. We've exhausted that grid search at this time. We have yet to locate Quentin at this time. It's still a missing person's case, but we are actively investigating this. Our detectives have worked 18-hour days since this has started. The FBI has come in and offered us assistance. They've been a tremendous resource for us. We've had the assistance of SPD, Chatham County Sheriff's Office, Liberty County Sheriff's Office came up with their bloodhounds to track and do a track. We've tried to use every available resource that we can that makes sense within our scope of the investigation to try to get a better understanding of what's happened to little Quentin. My detectives today, or our detectives today, are continuing to aggressively investigate, look at all investigative avenues, again, working with the FBI, downloading technology, looking at that data. Does that take us in one direction or another? So we hope that we can get some more information or more understanding of the situation as we go forward. But unfortunately, that's all I really have to report today. I wanted to, as I told you privately, Commissioner, your constituents out there in Girard have been fantastic. They've dropped off food to the detectives at the precinct. They've been very supportive. They went out and helped search their own backyards, things of that nature. So the community has been very, supportive of us and our efforts, and we appreciate them as well. So,
Okay.
aside from that, I'll answer any questions.
Thank you. Now, the update, please don't ask him any questions about, okay? He gave you what he could give you, okay? So don't ask any questions about the update. But if you have anything else about his report, okay? Because it's active and it involves FBI, so,
Yes, sir.
okay? And questions about his report, go ahead.
Yes, sir. One question. This might be for you or our attorney, chief. The right to a speedy trial. What is that? 4 years in Georgia? Did they suspend that due to COVID?
Yes, they did.
They did.
Yeah.
In various phases. I think it ended up being 9, 10 phases before we all got through with it. But normally, if you put a speedy trial request in, that goes to the top of the pile and is moved along pretty fast. And it sort of just depends on the set of circumstances that you got or the charge. But for the most part, once you get the speedy trial order, it's front and center. A lot of times defense attorneys do not ask for the speedy trial because they know they won't be prepared by the time it comes to trial.
So when it was suspended due to COVID, you said it took it took some time to actually get there. Who would we ask to find out how many of those were filed? Is that?
I have no idea. I assume the DA would perhaps know. We know that there's a backlog of cases that are criminal cases that just stacked up during COVID. And you can tell that because of the lack of civil cases that are being tried. There's still, criminal cases take precedent over a civil case, and therefore, if you want to try a civil case, you got to find a way to either get a judge, get a pro tem judge, or somebody that everybody can agree on and pick a particular date for a particular time. And not everybody can afford to do that.
Okay. And so would the clerk of court maybe have that?
Possibly.
Okay.
I don't know whether they keep up with that. They know how many cases are stacked up, how many of them are criminal,
But the
and
details.
how many of them are civil, but I don't know whether they know how many of those are speedy trial. Perhaps they could.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay? Thank you, Chief.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate what you do.
Appreciate y'all. Thank you.
Going to the action calendar, no one wanted to move anything, so may I have a motion to accept the action calendar in its entirety?
Mr. Chairman, I think, I make a motion that we accept the action calendar in its entirety.
Properly motion and second that the action calendar be accepted as its entirety. Are you ready for the question? Let us please vote. Okay. Going on now to there are no first readers. Now, in each one of the second readers that you'll find on the agenda, you have to sign up, and we're gonna do each one of them as they're listed. All right, so anyone who wants to speak for or against on the first reader, on the first, second reader, all right, please sign up to say which one you're going to do. And what we'll do is, I'll pause in between all of them to give everybody a chance to speak on the one that they want to speak on, so that we don't have any cross confusion, okay? And so we'll give you a few minutes to sign up with the manager. But we're getting ready for the first one, which is the petitioner, Jason Ball, agents for Patel. Is requesting rezoning from an A-T agriculture tourist and RA residential agriculture to BC, B-C community business and IL light industrial zone district to at 5659 Ogeechee Road, MPC file number Z 1221-000211, pin 109910703103991 07025D 10991 07032 District 5. The Planning Commission recommend denial of the petitioner's request to rezone the subject property from A-T agricultural tourist and RA residential agriculture to BC community business and IL light industrial zone district, District 5. All right, do we have everyone who wants to speak on this petition? Do we have them signed up? Where did the manager go? All right. Mr. Marcus.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Marcus Lotson for the Metropolitan Planning Commission.
Okay.
The rezoning request that's before you today, the petitioner is requesting to rezone the properties that you highlighted, sir, to two zoning classifications. He's proposing that the front portion of the property be zoned commercial and the rear portion be zoned light industrial. This vicinity map highlights the property here on the east side of Highway 17, Ogeechee Road, between Cottonville Road and Derrick Inn Road. This is a tax map that shows the parcels that are in question for today's request. This property is a little bit south of the Savannah Gardens landscape facility nursery, if you're familiar with where that's located. You can see on the zoning map that here the front portion of the property is zoned AT, the rear portion of the property is currently zoned RA, residential agriculture, and the petitioner is proposing to, as I mentioned, have the front be zoned commercial and the rear be zoned light industrial. I believe his intentions are to store containers on the property on the rear. Here is a aerial map of the subject property. The property that you see here is the nursery that I mentioned. This is an auto repair facility immediately adjacent to the subject property. This property has been used as a number of commercial uses over the years. Primarily, it's been a used car sales lot. And this is in another aerial map that shows the things in the general vicinity of the subject property. This is an exhibit that the petitioner provided showing the access into the property from Ogeechee Road. The front portion in green would be the portion that's proposed for commercial. The rear portion in the rear is the portion that would be proposed as light industrial. It's a total of approximately 5.5 acres. One of the issues that came up during the Planning Commission was the access to the property. Because a portion of this property is proposed to be industrial, that would create, obviously, some truck traffic to and from the property. There is no median cut at this location, so this property would be right in, right out, access only. So going north on Highway 17 into the property, traveling north on Highway 17 into the property, and then turning out to make a right. And as you can see here, the petitioners proposed a decel lane here to accommodate those trips. That was one of the primary concerns, both the use of the property as well as the access to the property during the Planning Commission hearing. One of the other things that was noted during the meeting is that this area, this portion of Highway 17, and a lot of the rest of the development pattern in the area is transitioning away from more industrial type uses to more commercial type uses and some multifamily uses, as you know. And so we did go through and provide the various uses that are attached to the agenda that are permitted in the light industrial district, which was a concern of our board in their review. I think based on the comments made at the hearing, both the commercial portion on the frontage was less of a concern than the light industrial portion at the rear, based on the fact that, you know, it would create additional heavy truck trips on Highway 17 at a location that is not signalized or has what they believe to be adequate ingress and egress. Based on those findings, the Planning Commission is recommending denial of the request to rezone the property.
All right, any questions for Mr. Lotson, I'm sorry. All right, Commissioner Middleton?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Lawson, is this property before us before they were trying to put some apartments here? Is this that same property, do you recall?
I believe the petition you're talking about, let me see, is a little south of this property, is not this same property. There was a proposal for a multifamily development near here, but it was a different property. Okay. A very similar situation though, because most of these parcels along 17 are long and deep, and this is a similar situation.
And it's only a right in, right out?
Correct.
And there's no break in the road on
Yeah,
17?
when you look here at Highway 17, there's a median here, so there's no access to the
Yeah,
opposite
and
side.
then, and they get in the queue, and the queue can only hold like 2 or 3 cars.
Well, that was a concern of ours, was access into the property, both entering and exiting based on the speed, you know, that's typical on that highway, and the fact that I believe the next signalized intersection is Derricken Road.
Yeah, there's a truck pad there on the corner of Derrickson and Ogeechee Road.
Right, and frankly, there's been a lot of.
No, there's no light.
No light there, yeah.
There's
The
no
next,
light, but I understood that.
Full access, I should say, not signalized.
And do you have a proposed use for this?
Well, the petition is proposing that the front portion remain or become a commercial use, and the rear portion be truck and trailer storage, where, you know, people would come in the morning, take containers, go to the ports, bring them back in the evening, et cetera. And the applicant's agent is here and can kind of describe the nature of their proposed business.
Thank you.
All right, any more questions for Mr. Lawson? Okay, how many people do we have signed up?
We don't have anyone signed up for number 1.
No one signed up for this one? All right, for number 1? Nobody
I think
signed
only
up?
the petitioner is here for that one, Mr. Chairman.
Petitioner is here?
Yes, sir.
All right, you can come forward.
Sir,
Yes, sir.
Chairman, Commissioners. My name is-
State your name and address and so forth for the records.
Yes, sir. My name is Jason Ball. I'm a professional engineer with Ball Maritime Group. I'm here to represent Mr. Raj Patel and his rezoning request for these properties. Just to hit some questions or some comments that we heard right off the bat. There's no intent to store containers here. That's not the intent. It's just going to be a truck yard.
I didn't hear you. There's no intent?
There's no intent to store or stack containers or be a container yard. There's not going to be like 6 high. I mean, that's not it. This is a truck terminal basically for dispatching trucks. It actually has more to do with the front of the property than the back of the property. The front already has multiple businesses that Mr. Patel leases to. They are utilizing the front of that property. The property, and you can see on this image here, is actually bifurcated in the middle, so there's only about 2.5 acres in the front for that business. And then there's this long, deep lots, like you heard Marcus say, and those deep lots make it difficult to have any real use behind that at all. You'd have to swallow up pretty much all of those properties within the canal right of way and the other light industrial on the other side to try to make something work there, but it'd still be too small. And you're gonna have access issues anyway because you already have 3 curb cuts on that side, and then the other light industry doesn't have any decel lane either. So we're proposing to kind of, to put in this decel lane and this access, which would be a, GDOT style right in, right out, which will allow the trucks to leave in the morning and return in the afternoon after they're done with all their business doing the drayage to the port. So there'd be no reason for them to come back throughout the day, back and forth. They'd be dispatched in the morning and return at night to be basically stored, ready for dispatch the next day. That would be the best use for that, the back of that property, from our opinion, just as a giant parking area. I don't want to belabor the points about, it's, like I said, 2 acres of business in the front, 3.5 acres of a light industrial in the back. Most of that is eaten up by the requirements for the buffer. There's also a power line. It's a high voltage power line that runs through the property, so that kind of cuts down again on what you can do as far as like having a nice area for a business that really is suitable for light industry like the uses next door. We presented our case to MPC. We were denied by 1 vote. We followed a very contentious petition before us for another rezoning in a very sensitive historic neighborhood over by the arena. We kind of feel that staff had approval at that point. We'd worked with staff for about 6 months to get a plan that made sense, that fit with this area. The area is growing differently from what the plan shows for the county. This would not be anticipated to have more than 50 trucks. We can't really fit more than 50 truck spots in there, just from a geometry standpoint, with all the other engineering requirements. We've got Rockingham Farms just down the road that's gonna need a lot of truck drayage to and from the port, and all the marine terminals. We've got, we've done the traffic analysis. We know it's right in, right out. It's not ideal, but again, it's the dispatch in the morning and returning back in the afternoon. Those are really the 2 key points, and it'll just work around the gate hours for the Port Authority. It won't go anything after when the Port Authority shuts their gates. We got two properties that are just to the south that are for sale as well. They have deep lot issues. There's some type of commercial activity in the front of those as well. You can see that on that aerial as well. So that whole area is just kind of growing out until you get to that canal there. Let's see, what other points here? You've got about 400 feet. This is kind of in keeping with that highway corridor approach, which is you've got about 400 feet or so from the right-of-way back to the power line. And that is already used as business. It already is commercial, so we're just gonna carve that out as business. That's in keeping. And then the area that's underutilized in the back is what we would have, and it's about 500 feet deep, and it's surrounded by a wooded area and light industrial on one side, and then it technically is, it's the same property owner that wraps around the back, and there really is nothing back there as part of the adjacent property use. So that's pretty much it. We're just here to try to petition our case further with Chatham County. Mr. Patel is a business owner. If you want to say something about your businesses.
Good morning. Oh, sorry. Good morning. My name is Patel Rashmikant, and I've been doing business with the city and Chatham County for 20 years. And I'm trying to do best what I can to make this property upgrade. And in the front, like I say, we're doing business as a car lot. And we're trying to ask Commissioner to see what's the best, if there's anything that we need to do to make it work.
All right, any question for, who's questioning? You?
I did.
Okay, Commissioner Milton, anyone else? Okay, Commissioner Milton?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My concern is safety. safety is a big issue. And right there, you're in between two neighborhoods, and I don't know what kind of buffer there is behind where you're proposing. But there are neighborhoods, and they're building up all the way up almost to 17. So you have residents that you're gonna mix in with truck traffic and fumes and noise and light and all that kind of stuff. Is this gonna be a 24-hour operation?
No, ma'am. The dispatching would be in the morning, and then the trucks would return by the afternoon. It would be
And you're
24
talking
hours.
the peak hours of the day when 17 is already jam-packed. The people coming from Richmond Hill, coming down 17, you got truck traffic right on that corner right there at Derrick's Landing and Derrickson Road and Nageechee Road. And then I think that they're proposing warehouses down the street across from the Progressive, if I'm not clear, if I'm not sure that that's what's gonna happen. I'm just concerned about the congestion. There's a neighborhood that's already being built on the other side of you. The traffic is just, I'm concerned about it. I get calls now from the residents that are there that they can't get out of there's a light at Cottonville, but there's not a light at Derrickson. And GDOT has been doing a study to see if there would be a light there. Right now, they don't have a real need. And we talked about this when I had that proposed apartment complex coming, that perhaps that might enhance GDOT to put a light there because the traffic would increase. I just don't know that they could take another truck pad. I don't know.
Yes, ma'am. When we submit our site plan to the county for approval, if we need to submit a traffic study, we'll go through that. We only have 50 trucks that'll be using the site. Like I said,
50 trucks?
Yes, ma'am.
Wow.
That's way below the threshold for a GDOT massive transportation study. But you definitely have to deal with the safety concerns, which is why we're adding the decel lane. Instead of having 3 curb cuts, now you just have the 1. And it would just be a dispatch operation, so they wouldn't be traveling back and forth in there throughout the day. Once they get to the port, they pick up their cargo, and then they take it to whatever warehouse, and then when they're done to the day, they come back and they park their trucks there and they go home for the day. That's how the truck terminal works. But the 50 trucks would also help justify any kind of light that you're talking about downstream that
But
GDOT
how will
would
it
put in there.
justify the amount of traffic on the road?
Well, I mean, if the traffic on the road is still going to be growing because you do have Rockingham Farms and you're still going to be using all the same routes to get to all of those different warehouses that are growing up. This is an underutilized piece of property in the back that it would be hard to have anything, like you wouldn't bring people into a business and go all the way through into the back like that. It'd be hard to have a business.
Well, we're still developing Derrick's Landing.
Right.
And those houses are coming right up to probably the back of your property. So is there a buffer, got a berm? How do you propose to keep, I mean, those
yes, ma'am.
people are gonna be very upset
It's the
that
standard.
when truck traffic starts coming in.
It's the standard buffer, but we don't get close to them. There's actually another industrial, light industrial between us and that development. So are you talking about the development across Highway 17?
And is that water behind you?
It is. It's part of that large facility there is actually the nursery, and it's all owned by the same group there. So that is a giant buffer, which is another business that wraps around us. I mean, that property alone is about 750 feet wide.
Marcus, did you have something else you wanted to add?
I was gonna show you another map if I had it. I thought I did, but, let's see. So that's the lake that you see behind the property.
And isn't that one of the retaining ponds they dug there?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to show you, is the retaining pond. That's what it is. You consider that to be a buffer?
Well, that doesn't meet the definition of a buffer as it relates to the zoning ordinance.
Okay.
That's an existing feature.
Yeah, that's what
I
I'm
would
looking
say,
for.
though, that this
It's not a
property,
buffer.
well, here we go. you know, this property immediately abuts the back of the landscape nursery. This is a auto repair facility here. So they're not immediately adjacent to an existing residential neighborhood, but I do want to make a point to the issue that Commissioner Milton brought up regarding this property. And really what we're seeing here from a planning standpoint is, you know, this is obviously one of, west part of Chatham is one of the growth areas that's under a lot of pressure right now from a development standpoint, because you have available acreage, unlike a lot of the city of Savannah, for example. The fact that the port is growing at the rate it's growing, people who have, you know, anything from 5 to 5,000 acres are looking to, you know, take advantage of that opportunity. And just in this corridor, we have seen a lot of requests for things like truck terminals, container storage, because that's an area that is there's a great need for that right now. From that, my point is that the petitioner is requesting that portion of the property be zoned to light industrial, and although their intention is to establish a 50 truck terminal, we did have to look at the entire breadth of the light industrial zoning district, because that business, if you choose to adopt this zoning, may go there and operate, it may not, and someone else may come in and operate a different business. So we really had to look at it more holistically, and I think that's why the Planning Commission was concerned about not just what Mr. Patel is proposing, but just adding industrial zoning to this corridor at large, because we know that there's a lot of housing coming into this corridor in some of the areas that you mentioned. There's also a significant amount of multifamily housing either being constructed or about to be constructed in this area. I don't think we're going to solve the traffic problem in the near term, because we've already got essentially a 4-lane divided highway. So adding a heavier and more intense zoning classification to this area, I think the Planning Commission found would exacerbate some of the issues that we're dealing with already.
Okay, anything else?
What about the drainage? I mean, you're talking concrete, and then that they already have issues in Derrick's Landing right now. I have residents that we're working with Public Works and trying to get drainage fixed. That's going to be another issue.
Well, that's always an issue with any development, and you know, I don't know what Mr. Patel's intent would be from a development standpoint on the back part of the property, but they would have to address that through the county engineer's office should they, you know, move forward with a development on this property to address their on-site retention of their water.
Anything else? Question? Any other questions? Let me ask. I want to ask a few questions. First thing, let me ask from Mr. Lotson.
Yes, sir.
All right. You say right in, right out, right?
Yes. And
now, is this property? Is it south of Dean Forest Road?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So trucks coming in, right? They're gonna come in off of Dean Forest Road and turn on the 17.
And it's interesting you bring that up, because we had a long conversation about that in the Planning Commission meeting, about where the trucks would come from and where they would go when they leave. I would like to ask Mr. Ball to speak to that, because he did have a very detailed explanation as to how they would route things. But I do want to remind the commission that that's his business operation proposal, and not necessarily any other business operators, you know, proposal. But would you explain?
I was going, but I wanted to make sure exactly whether we were south of Dean Forest Road. That's why I asked you that question.
So in this map that's before you
My
now,
other
you
two
can
questions
see,
are for Mr. Ball.
Yeah, but you can see Dean Forest Road up here in the corner, where it comes into Highway 17, and then the subject property down here.
Okay. So, okay, now my other two questions are for Mr. Ball.
Okay.
Number one is, I heard you say that you thought that this came before the commission after something else was contentious.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, it was very contentious.
All right, and you don't think that you thought it'd affect what you did, what your presentation?
100%. I'm actually a resident of the county.
Right.
And it was pretty fiery.
I know. because I was there.
Yeah, and I mean, in due point, and I've worked on the arena.
But here's
it's
what
tough.
I wanted to ask now. I'm talking about a procedural thing now, then I'll get to my other question later, okay? If you thought that petition before you affected your petition, was there any way that he could go back to the MPC before coming here? That's a procedural question.
Procedurally, once the planning commission made a recommendation during that hearing, then we forward that petition
Here.
into you.
Okay, so
Yes, sir.
his only other
Yeah.
choice was to come here.
His only other choice, I guess,
right.
at the time would have been to request a continuance, and then that would have sent it back to the MPC
Okay,
again.
all right.
Theoretically, this commission, of course, could remand it back if you chose to do that.
Okay. So now, my other question for you, Mr. Ball, is looking at the intersection and knowing, and you got right in, right out, okay? So any truck coming from the port would either have to go to 95 and then come back to your property and make a right in. Am I correct? Or either come through Little Neck Road or Quaco Road to make a right into your property. Or the other alternative, which you know gonna happen, is he'll come off Dean Forest Road, go down to Cottonville or that other, but there's another, there's another intersection. Before you get to Berwick, when you're going into where the Kroger's is, there's a turning. They would have to, and I'm just showing you now, okay? I'm not, even if they go to Berwick, even if they go to the place that I'm talking about, and they came off of Dean Forest Road, they gotta go down there and make a U-turn in order to get into the right turn. See, that's my point is. My point is you're gonna create a problem down the road because the only way, if they come up Dean Forest Road, the only way for them to get a right turn into your property is to go make a U-turn. Whether it's at Berwick or whether it's at Cottonville or whether it's up there at Quaco Road or even if they all the way up to Little Neck Road, they would have to U-turn and come back down to the property. You see what I'm coming from?
But you're assuming a lot of things first.
I know I'm assuming a lot of things because I see it happening all the time. All right, I'm talking about even now before you get this permit, I've seen tractor trailers try to make U-turns at the places I'm talking about. And I'm saying, in order to get to right turn on your property, they either gonna have to do that or they gonna have to come from Pooler Parkway into Quaco Road or from Bloomingdale Road into Little Neck Road to get to your right turn. That's my point. My point is they're gonna have to go 3 or 4 miles out the way to come to your right turn. See, because there's a median in the middle here.
Right.
They can't jump the median.
Right.
So if they come off of Dean Forest, the only way they're gonna get to a right turn is to go down somewhere and turn around and come back, right? I just wanna know
It
if
would
we
be
agree with
impossible,
that.
and I'm not gonna defend all the CDLs that are driving, speeding through
Right.
neighborhoods. I mean, like I said, I'm a county resident too, I totally
Right.
agree. Can I respond to that?
Sure.
Give you kind of this theoretical,
Mhm.
I'm a ports specialist.
Right.
Okay, and I'm also an engineer. I'm also grew up here and I'm from here. The way that this is going to work is that these will be bobtail trucks, okay? They'll go right out of the site in the morning when they're dispatched, and then they'll drive either to Rockingham or, some other warehouse that's on that side. And then they'll go and they'll take a chassis at that point with a container, and they'll take it over to the port. They'll interchange it with another container, then they'll go to another warehouse, wherever it is. It could be Bryan County, it could be Effingham, it could be anywhere. And their idea is they want to try to make about 3 or 4 of those runs a day. And then when they come back, who knows where they're going to be at? They're going to come back, though, without a chassis and a container because we don't want to be responsible for the security of that cargo. That needs to be handed off to the warehouse and left. And then the dispatcher will bring the bobtail back. So it can come from anywhere. And it's only 50 trucks. We've seen terminals with 1,500 trucks. So, I mean, it is definitely not a massive terminal. This is just using an unutilized small space. That's why it's a right in, right out. That's why we're not asking to try to put a traffic light in. We're trying to do any of this other stuff. And all that would be justified with GDOT and with our submittal to the county, which will look at not only traffic, but stormwater. We'll have to make sure our buffers are there. We do show a plan Marcus, that plan that was there that has the buffers and everything, all that's been shown according to what the development standards are today. So we're following all the rules, but we're conjecturing on what the traffic would be because we don't have contracts in place. We don't have an operator for this yet. But basically what we know about the area and how the truck traffic works is that it'll be bobtails coming in and out of this. The trucks cannot make a U-turn on Highway 17 unless they get in the right-hand lane and do a large swoop around. And I'm not saying I haven't seen it. I do see it,
Okay.
and I want to unsee it.
Right.
But it is bad. But I mean, that's for the police to handle.
Right.
But at the end of the day, it's that's what we're petitioning for, and we would have to show all of that. And if GDOT brings any of that stuff up, or the county brings that stuff up in the review of the traffic plan, we'll address it accordingly. It may include some type of a restriction on our operating hours or something like that. But we're willing to work with that to make it work, just so we don't have this 3.5 acres of unutilized space in the back.
All right. Do we have any knowledge as to whether this property is gonna act like the other property on the Geechee Road and they come to us to get a permit and then they annex it in? We don't have any knowledge of that? Okay. That's a question for the manager. He answered it. I wouldn't prefer. All right, any other questions now for Mr. Ball? No, yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Is there a auto repair shop next to your property?
Yes, ma'am.
So how wide is that turn to go inside the street that you're proposing to put this truck? I mean,
This exhibit right here, you can see our the curb cut, the taper. So we've centered the access point to the best we could in the properties to try to keep our existing commercial businesses in the front. We don't want to have to move a building or whatever.
so there are existing businesses in the front?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
So do you realize you're gonna have, that queue may hold two trucks? Those trucks coming from your property gonna get to 17, and they're gonna have to sit there until they get a break to get on the road. When they get on the road, I mean, that property is just gonna hold that truck, that queue is gonna hold probably two trucks. I'm concerned also about you coming in, is that gonna be wide enough for the business that's already there?
Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am. It'll be, the dispatcher can actually control that as well in the back so that they don't jam up all the business in the front. All of these tenants will be leased out by Mr. Patel. So he'll have complete control over any of the guys.
It's only one business here, so it's not like multiple, so it's just one here, and then the used car dealership is there, so it's not like, too many businesses,
All right, anything else? From anybody? Anything else? Yes, sir, Mr. Adams?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My concern is exiting.
Turn your mic.
My concern is exiting because you got Dean Forest not that far away from here, so they're gonna be trying to get in the left-hand lane once they exit. And traffic is already bad.
No, we have plenty of room between Dean Forest. I think the issue is we don't know if they'll be going left or right. They could go to the port and get a container. Most likely they won't be going directly to the port in the morning. Because if they have a bobtail, they're gonna try to go to the warehouse, the closest one, and pick up a chassis with a container and take it in and do a full transaction. So drop off a box, pick up a box, and take it out.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right, any other questions? Okay, we need a motion now. The recommendation from the planning commission is denial. Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Yes.
I want to accept the MPC's recommendation and deny this request.
Is there a second?
Second.
Properly motion and second that we uphold the MPC and deny this request. Are you ready for the question? Please vote. All right. Thank you, sir. All right, let's go on to number 2.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. All right, have they signed up, Mr. Manager, for number 2?
Yes, we have.
Okay. All right. The petitioner, Harry Yellen, for Hill Point, I hope I'm saying that right?
Yes, sir.
LLC agent for William Redden is requesting rezoning from PBC, Plan Community Business, to R-3 Multifamily Residential and BC Commercial Business Zoning District, MPC file number Z-0622-000290, pin 1102904022C. The Planning Commission recommends approval of the petitioner's request to rezone property at Ogeechee Road and Chatham Parkway, a 45-acre tract of land from PBC, Planned Community Business, to R-3 Multifamily Residential and BC Community Business Residential Agriculture, District 6. Mr. Lotson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This petition is also a request to rezone property. The property on the map that's highlighted is the subject property. It's located on the north side of Ogeechee Road, approximately 1,000 feet east of Canebrake Road and in the unincorporated area. It's approximately 45 acres in size and it's bounded on the north side by Highway 204. You can see north of that is the Al Henderson Golf Club. This is a tax map of the subject property with the proposed zoning included. Currently, this entire property is zoned commercial. The petitioner is proposing is maintain a portion that abuts Ogeechee Road as commercial, and for the rest to be rezoned to the R3 designation, which is a multifamily residential classification. The property immediately to the east is the Botanical Garden, formerly known as the Bamboo Garden, and immediately east of that of the subject property is Southwest Middle School. This is an aerial map that shows the subject property. It is undeveloped. It has mature vegetation, and from what we can tell, has never had an active use on the property. This is a zoning map that shows the existing zoning pattern in the area. One of the primary points of discussion here, and this is similar to our last petition as it relates to access to the property, is that this property that we started calling Florida because of the shape of it, gets very narrow as it abuts Ogeechee Road. So the access point would be there. Because it's bounded by the Bamboo Garden and the school, other access points were limited, with it being Highway 204 at the north and that being a limited access highway at that location. I believe the applicant, and he can discuss this today, has been in contact with the Board of Education as it relates to allowing potentially an emergency access point through their property, which I believe private developers have done in the past. This is an aerial map that just shows a general development pattern in the area. For whatever reason, presumably because this has just been under private family ownership, this property has not developed. It is a 45-acre tract, which is a large piece of property, and it is zoned commercial, so theoretically it could be a number of uses under the current zoning, including retail, it could be car dealerships, it could be hotels, it could be a Walmart, it could be almost anything based on the size of the property and the zoning. The petitioner did provide a concept plan to develop the property, and because they were proposing that this front portion be commercial or maintain the existing commercial zoning, you can see that area here, and they're showing the rest of it to be potentially built out as a multifamily development. They show the proposed spine road into the property. The gray boxes you see are multifamily buildings, and this area in the rear would be designated as recreation and green space and for stormwater management. There's an area, I believe it's right here, there's an existing county canal that bisects the property. One of the interesting things that came out of the discussion with the applicant on this project is that typically a long single street that gives access to this many residential units would be an issue for public safety, particularly fire, because of the limited access to the property. In discussions prior to filing their application that the applicant had with emergency services, what they decided to do, and I'll allow the applicant to go into more detail on this, is that in lieu of finding another access point, they are willing, I think, and have had some conversations to both set aside a portion of this property and pay for a fire station on site so that should there be an incident, they could respond to that emergency. And that is located right down here at the front. But I'll let them go into the conversations that they've had regarding that. I want to let you know that this is only a concept plan. Should the zoning be adopted, this is not a plan that is also being adopted with that zoning. It would only change the zoning of the lion's share of the property to the R3 designation. So those really were the primary issues that came up in our discussions during the public hearing at the Planning Commission meeting. Of course, traffic came up also as a major issue because of the potential number of units on this property and the potential number of trips that would be generated by those units. However, in comparison to the potential, had the property been built out as commercial, the Planning Commission found that it could be addressed. So with that, the Planning Commission did recommend approval, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
All right, any questions for Mr. Lawson? Questions? Okay, none. All right, Commissioner Adams?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Lawson, how many units are we talking about?
Well, let me say this. There's a couple of points I want to make regarding that. One is that the applicant's proposed plan would allow 348 multifamily units and 63 townhomes. That's a total of 411 units. However, that's this plan. And that's close to the maximum that would be allowed by the density, but it doesn't mean necessarily that that is what would get built should the property be rezoned. But I would certainly think in that ballpark.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Ms.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah. How close is this to the school?
It's immediately adjacent to Southwest Middle, so this is the subject property highlighted in red. This is Southwest Middle School right here.
So they're going to create an entrance into this property that they're proposing?
Well,
Is there going to be another entrance, or are they going to use the same entrance that the kids use for school?
No, the primary entrance to the subject property would be here where it abuts Ogeechee Road. The entrance I was referring to was a potential emergency access into the school property should there be a need for one. And I think there's examples of those around where, you'd have a gate that would be there so you wouldn't have regular traffic. But if, for example, emergency services needed to access the property and the Highway 17 frontage was blocked, they could use that. But it would not be for daily traffic. It would be for emergency access only.
Okay.
For
We done?
emergency? So you're saying they'll go through the school if they had to get in there?
Yes, in the event, for example,
emergency.
this access were blocked, there was a car accident or something, and then they needed to get into the subject property to put out a fire, they could use that emergency access to do that.
And has that been negotiated already?
The last conversations I had with the applicant is that they were in that conversation, so I'll let him answer that
Yeah,
today.
that's with the school system.
Yes, sir.
That's between the applicant and the school system, so
Correct.
he can't answer that. All right, anything
I'm
else?
good, thank you.
All right, the petitioner is here.
Mr. Farrar.
Oh, okay, hold on, Ms. Gill. Yeah.
On page 2 of your report, you got approval, votes of 2, but you've got 8 names, and then you got denial votes of 8, but you have 2 names, so Which is it?
It's not a denial on this one.
Oh, yes, sir, I follow you. So the initial recommendation by staff was for denial, which is why you see that. But the commission voted, oh, I see what you're saying. Under approval, it says 2, and under denial it says 8, but the names are transposed. So it was to answer your question, it was an 8-2 vote by the planning commission for approval.
So the planning commission voted 8 to approve.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions then? All right, the petitioner?
You want to look at this?
Yeah. You know what, let me even go here. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the commission, for the record, my name's Harold Yellen, and I'm here today on behalf of the owners of the property and also Hill Point, who will be the developers of the property. With me today is Mr. Marcus Wiedauer, who is a principal with Hill Point, and he's here to answer any questions y'all may have. As Mr. Lotson mentioned to you, this property is about 45 acres. It's bounded on the north by Abercorn, and there is no access to Abercorn per the DOT. We're bordered on the east by Southwest, I don't know if it's elementary or junior high, but it is the school, the west by what I call the Bamboo Farm, and south by Ageechee Road. The petition before you today is actually a downzoning. We're looking to downzone this property from what is its current zoning classification of PBC, which is a business zoning classification, to R39, which is multifamily, and that 9 means a density of 9 units per acre. The Chatham County zoning ordinance for multifamily allows you to go up to 40. This request is for 9. By way of comparison, single-family residential in Chatham County is frequently between 6 to 8 units per acre. So we are pretty close to single-family residential. In fact, our density, I said 9, we're actually 9.02 units per acre. Very close to what is single family in the county. The property before you today, as Mr. Lotson mentioned, is very unusual in its geometry. He and I have frequently referred to it as Florida. It has a panhandle to the north and it comes down to the south. And in its current BC zoning, there are a host of uses which are permitted as a matter of right. These uses, we think, would be hard to place on this property because it's so unique, it's so different looking. Commercial typically want to be on the street. I don't think they're going to want to be in the back on Abercorn where you have no access. But if we did put something there, there are crazy uses. We are permitted as a matter of right to put a hotel there. We could put a motel there. We could put a flea market there. We could put cocktail lounges. We can put nightclubs, and we can put package stores. And we think those uses are not compatible. They're not compatible with the neighborhood, and they're certainly not compatible with the school next door. We are fully aware of the challenges of the site, and that's why we proposed low-density, multifamily zoning classification with access to Ageechee Road, and at Ageechee Road there is a median cut. So not a right in, right out, there's an actual median cut directly in front of our property. And because we only have access to Ageechee Road, that's why we did strike a deal with Chatham Emergency Services. I originally thought we were just donating a pad site so that they could build a fire station. I learned in this process that we're actually doing both. We are donating the site and we are building the building for Chatham Emergency Services. And I'm not sure that I've ever stood before you and addressed fire protection by committing to build a fire station on site. So this is a first for me. There are a number of other petitions that we are just like that have come before you. I'm going to read just from one. Just last year, there was a petition to be rezoned at Ageechee Road, down the road from us. The request was for an R315, an even higher density than one we're asking for. And in that report, and I'm going to read from the MPC staff report, the MPC found that the Ageechee Road corridor is a transitioning area where properties are converting to non-residential uses and multifamily development. It is a growth area in the western part of the county. The proposed zoning, and that zoning was at 15 units an acre, is at the very low end of multifamily residential density. So we would submit that what we are showing you is even less dense. Once again, we are at 9 units an acre, and if zoning is approved, we will of course come back for full site plan approval. That's what we are required to do. The plan that Mr. Lotson showed you is a concept. It's nothing more than a concept to show you this plan works and it performs. So at this point, we would respectfully request approval of our petition as submitted. We're happy to answer any questions that y'all may have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions for Mr. Yellen?
Well, I don't have any questions. I don't have a question, I have comments, so. Well, actually, I do have questions too.
Go ahead.
All right, so thank you for the presentation, Mr. Yellen. So in reference to the density, with the creation of this project, are you foreseeing having to put in more drainage, well, not drainage, but retention ponds?
That will definitely be a site plan issue. We are required that after we build, that post-development exceed pre-development. So that's built into the process. When we come back to the Planning Commission with a full set of drawings, drainage will absolutely be handled. I think we benefit in some respects that we've got a school on one side and we've got the bamboo farm on the other. I'm not aware of any drainage issues in this area, but we are absolutely responsible for taking care of on-site drainage, and that will be presented to the MPC as part of our site plan. Yes, sir.
Well, I will say, not only is this in my district, this is actually my set. This is where I live at, right around the corner. I've had the opportunity to share this with the neighboring neighbors, Bradley Point, Teal Lake, Canebrake. Canebrake is actually where a lot of the drainage issues are going to come. On the back end, there's already retention ponds. And then once we start putting in concrete, taking up these beautiful pine trees that soak up so much water, we're going to have a lot of more drainage issues. And as you stated, there is already a county maintained canal going through the property. Understanding that, and this is a quick question, Mr. Lawson, the 2040 plan, when that was submitted, right, that had this listed as the current zoning?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Commercial. Yes.
So the 2040 plan was submitted maybe less than a year ago, and approved, and here we are, less than a year, changing suit. But nonetheless, aside from rush hour, one thing I can tell you, in looking at this map, I'll say this to my colleagues, you see how you have 17 down on the bottom there. You've got 204 across the back. Just like Mr. Yellen said, there is no access to 204, 17 either. If we were trying to kind of force the issue, which I heard that kind of being a statement in the last item, it's not as easy to force the issue with GDOT as it is to a solely county maintained road. Additionally, if there's an accident on 204, they come down Canebrake. If there's an accident on 17, they come down Canebrake. If there's an accident on 95, they're bumper to bumper down Canebrake. And when I'm saying this is my hood, this is my hood. This is where I live. Like, on Canebrake, I see these people's faces where they're bumper to bumper. Understanding that flooding is going to be an issue, I do understand that there is a exit, a cutout on 17. It's kind of going to mirror what we see at Moss Point, where cars are waiting forever to try to get out. A wider 17 would make this an easier bite, or even an additional access onto 204. But unfortunately, we can't continue to put the cart before the horse. And so with that, I'll yield the floor to any of my colleagues who have anything, but I would like to make a motion to deny.
Hold the motion.
Okay.
Hold on. You got,
Can I address?
now, listen, don't address what he said about making a motion, okay? If you wanna talk about other things he said, that's fine, but the motion, we aren't gonna deal with that right now, okay? Because isn't there someone else that was with you that wanted to speak?
Wiedauer.
Didn't you say we had two?
Two.
All right, so we gotta let them speak before we get to that part,
Yes, sir.
okay? So you want him to speak now, or you want,
Maybe Mr. Wiedauer, the fire chief, and if I could just follow up with closing comments, and then we'll be done.
okay, yeah, you can do that. I can allow you to do that, but, yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, and committee, I'm Marcus Wiedauer, I'm with Hill Point. I really was just here to answer any questions we have. I think Harold's done a great job presenting. I just want to commend staff and the fire department. We've been working on this for quite a while, and just, again, I'm happy to hear the comments, and if there's things that we can continue to address, I'm here to do so, but I'm just here for any
All right.
questions you might have.
Who else was it, the chief? All right, come on, chief.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chief Kearns, Chatham Emergency Services. Just short and sweet, we're very much in favor of getting a free fire station. It's going to save us $1.5 to $2 million in an area where we need to have a station placed.
Okay. All right. Now, Mr. Yellen, you may
Yeah, and Chairman,
wrap it up.
this is for everyone, but it also addresses some of the comments just made. No matter what we put on this site, it's going to impact adjoining property owners. The only way for it not to adjoin or to impact adjoining property owners is to do nothing and to leave this property as 45 acres and say, you can't develop this. And that, I think, Mr. Hart would agree, is a taking of someone's property without due process. We're here today to say we think our proposal for multifamily residential at 9 units an acre is preferable to our putting a mall or a shopping center or a hotel and motel or a package store or a tavern or a nightclub, and the list goes on and on. And there's some good uses too. What if we put a hospital here? A 24/7 hospital. What would that do to traffic? What would that do to drainage? So my point to everyone is, no matter what we put on this site, there will be an impact. I'm not going to tell you otherwise. There will be an impact. But what's before you today is not whether there'll be an impact, because we're going to address it. We have to go back for site plan review. The issue before you today is what makes more sense? Having multifamily residential and a fast-growing portion of Ageechee Road where we think it complements the school next door, or do we leave 45 acres of commercial property with intensive uses, which we believe will be more intrusive and will damage the neighborhood? Either way, we will address traffic and we will address drainage. That's what we have to do. But just to deny this because we're improving 45 acres is not fair to me. So I hope that we can stay focused on what the petition is. The petition before you is a downzoning from commercial to multifamily residential, 9 units per acre. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. And any others? Okay, all right.
Wait till you tell
Yeah, please. Go ahead.
Mr. Yellen, I definitely appreciate your concern with our community and understanding that, again, the 2040 plan, which included a outreach of the community to ask what they wanted to see here. Nobody had a problem with community business. In my engagement with the community over the last few months, in reference to this same thing, we prefer to see business there rather than more housing, considering that we have thousands of housing, of citizens who live in a 3 square mile radius of this actual location. I understand where you're coming from as it relates to there is going to be a change. There is going to be some sort of impact. I understand that, and I agree with you wholeheartedly. But again, when we're talking about densely populated housing on a already strained thoroughfare, whereas with community business, it's going to be open during business hours. It'll close when it's not. But nonetheless, it's more predictable what's going to go on in commercial property as it relates to when a business is there, a business is there. You can characterize it as a down zone, and that's fine. But having spoken with many of my constituents, this isn't just me, they disagree that this should be dense housing.
And traffic engineers will tell you that traffic will be worse, not better, commercially zoned. And when you say this densely populated, we are talking about 9 units per acre. Not much higher than single-family residential, which is 6 to 8. We're at 9.02 to be exact. I think the characterization that you've given is not fair. Times change, things change. The 2040 plan is going to change hundreds of times before our eyes. Our community has changed dramatically, even in post-COVID. Everything from Hyundai coming to, I can think of 20 examples of just the velocity of things coming our way. Things are changing, and if we cling to a 2040 plan, we're going to be in trouble. We're going to be in trouble, and that's why people have the opportunity to come here and ask for zoning changes. We see a need, and if you look at the shape of this property, again, Mr. Lotson and I call it Florida. Every bit of it looks like Florida to me with a panhandle. I don't know what commercial you would propose on the site, because everybody would want to be on the Geechee side, not on the Abercorn side. But to flood this with commercial, in our opinion, doesn't make sense, and that's what the Metropolitan Planning Commission found too by an 8-2 vote. It doesn't make sense to have 45 acres of commercial when you can have 45 acres of multifamily residential, and I respect your opinion.
Absolutely.
You know that,
Yeah.
and I've said for years, reasonable people can disagree.
Right, absolutely. And
so
you
I
did say, you did mention that the planning commission, the appointed bodies recommended approval, but the professional staff recommended denial. And that holds some weight too.
They did originally, but there were some things that were done where we did change our plan, including the fire station, to address some concerns. So we worked very hard to get to the place where we could get a vote of the commission. So I believe we worked as hard on this petition as any petition.
I have one quick question.
Yeah.
What did the community say when you engaged them?
I received no comments. Mr. Watson, did you? There was no comment from the community opposing this project. Not a single person attended the planning commission to oppose this.
All right.
All right, ready? Okay, did I get there? Everyone who wanted to speak now has spoken? All the signees have spoken? Yes, sir. All right, now I entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to deny the request to amend the zoning for this parcel.
Are you second? Speak up.
Oh,
Good.
it's on.
All right, it's been properly motioned and second that we deny this petition. Are you ready for the question? Any question?
Yes vote is in denial.
Well, yes vote, the motion on the floor is to deny. Any yes vote is to deny it, to go along with the motion. All right? Cast your votes. Takes 5, doesn't it, John? Attorney?
You got seven people, you got a quorum, so it's a majority vote.
Majority vote. All right. Petition is to deny.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate your
You
consideration.
agree?
Thank you.
All right. All right, now how many do we have sign up for petition number 3? Do we have those? Okay. The petitioner, Kenneth, and I'm not gonna try to pronounce your name, Ms. Evans. Sherry? Okay, that's how you pronounce it, all right. Is requesting rezoning from a RA, residential agriculture, to a B, Business Zoning District to Fountain Road, MPC file number Z-0622-000286, pin 1100507011. The Planning Commission recommends denial of petitioner's request to rezone the subject property from R-A Residential Agricultural to B Business District 6. Mr. Lotson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The property on Fountain Road is a request to rezone. The property is currently zoned RA, Residential Agriculture. The petitioner is requesting B, Business Zoning District, which is a heavy commercial zoning classification in the unincorporated area. This is a map, a vicinity map of the subject property. This is Fountain Road as it extends from Highway 17 around to Keller Flea Market Drive where it dead ends here. So that property is on the south side of Fountain Road. It's approximately 2¼ acres. Does not appear to have ever been developed. And we did have, well, let me go and give you a little more information on the property first. So here's the highlighted subject property. Properties on either side are undeveloped. Across the street, across Fountain Road, are the backs of some commercial properties that front onto Highway 17. And then you have a residential neighborhood along Clio Circle that backs up to the subject property. This is a zoning map that shows the boundary of the zoning. The portions that abut Ogeechee Road are primarily in the B zoning classification, which is what the petitioner is requesting. The properties on the south side of Fountain Road are primarily residential agriculture with single-family residential primarily being the development pattern in that area. This is an aerial map that shows the subject property, and I do want to also go through a few, let's see, I think I have those here. You know, there was some discussion about the development pattern in the area during your last meeting. Most of what you see that is up here that fronts onto Ogeechee Road is now developed commercially. There's a car wash, there's a heavy equipment rental facility as well. And there was discussion about how this property relates to those properties. There is an existing buffer along the north side of Fountain Road that separates these properties. And all the properties that are back here along Fountain Road, which is about a 20-foot wide paved road, are residential. I believe the applicant also had some information that they're going to share in terms of some photographs that were taken that were discussed at the last meeting, and I think now is probably a good time to, I got some other information we're going to show you as well.
You going to show that to us, or they going to show it to us?
I'll do it. Yeah, you can close that out. Just wanted to go through those first.
Huh? Oh, okay.
Yeah,
But no, what I'm asking Mr. Lotson is he keying it up for the petitioner to put it on there? So now, Mr. Lotson, are you through with your presentation?
Yes, sir.
All right, any questions for Mr. Lotson? Now, any question from anybody up here? No question? All right.
All right, on page 2.
Turn your mic on.
Of your, on page 2 of your report, you have approval of 10 votes and denial of 0 votes. But on the piece of paper I got here, it recommends denial. So which is it?
Which is it?
I'm getting 2 different sets of recommendations.
See, we're reading the staff report and we're reading what's on the petition in front of us. So that's why you got the differences. So we need to clear that up.
It's page 2 of the staff report.
Does
Like the motion was to deny it, and then they
motion was to approve?
I don't know what it is. That's why I'm asking Marcus. I'm confused. But on the report, it says 10 to nothing.
10 to nothing approval.
Yeah, that should be denial, which was.
So that's, well, it's a mistake on the staff report?
Yes, sir.
That's what he's asking you?
Yes. So the motion and the action was to deny the petition.
Okay. Yeah. That's.
Well, I mean, to me, that makes a big difference, you know, so I want to make sure you're accurate that, you know, you got 10 votes to deny versus 10 votes to approve. I mean,
I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
All right. You got a question for Mr. Lotson?
Yes, sir.
Okay, go ahead.
So, in reading the report, one of the points that, that road is not necessarily meant to actually maintain commercial traffic or
Yeah, that was
potential
one of
industrial
the,
traffic?
that certainly was one of the issues that came up and we believe is accurate, is that Fountain Road, which really only serves the few houses that are back there now, and then obviously access to the flea market, which is the primary use of that road on the weekends, is a road that is about 20 feet wide. It's paved. There's no curb or gutter, but it is a paved right-of-way. And again, similar to the first petition we heard today, what the applicant has proposed to us in terms of his business model may be found to be perfectly suitable at this location. However, the B zoning designation, which is what we were looking at, is a heavy commercial zoning district that allows a number of heavier uses than what the applicant is proposing.
Okay, Commissioner Farrell?
Mr. Lawson, is there a zoning that would more narrowly define to fit what the petitioner wants to do with it and exclude some of these other more intense uses?
And that was really, Commissioner Farrell, the issue as we were having early discussions with the applicant before he filed even, is that his business model essentially is outdoor storage for the most part of his equipment, trucks, et cetera. And that was the only zoning classification in the county that would accommodate that. Unfortunately, it also accommodates heavier uses than what he's proposing, and we didn't have a district that would allow, or be less intense and allow what he was proposing to do.
So there are literally hundreds of different zoning combinations that isn't there a pathway to create a zoning that would narrow the use by agreement between the petitioner and PC and the county commission?
Sure, there's ways to do that. One way would be to potentially exclude certain uses from any adoption of a zoning at this level. Another way would be to create a new zoning district that would accommodate certain uses with certain standards. That would be a text amendment to the zoning ordinances. Those are, longer processes, but those are certainly possible.
At whose expense? Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, so how would, obviously if it passed today, that's a moot point, but if it didn't pass, or if we remanded it back to the MPC and the petitioner, I mean, would that be a more amenable solution? Because if I recall, is this the same person that just had some equipment that came before us recently?
Yeah, yes, he was here last time.
Yeah, so.
But I think, just not cutting you off, but I think you're asking a legal question that the attorney need to expound on.
Technically, the commission, if it chose to, could remand back with direction to the MPC, and your direction might be something like, we remand you back for outdoor storage of equipment with a business and make a very narrow permitted use of storage, but very narrow permitted use of storage to say outdoor equipment with things used in the business, okay, versus we're gonna allow outdoor stuff to happen here. And the outdoor stuff could be a container yard. which you may not wish to have stacked storage in a container yard. So I think if you remanded it, the MPC would have to look at a very narrow text amendment for this, but if it's gonna allow storage, it would really need to define the standards on storage so you don't get just anything.
So it comes to what you say.
So
maybe
that's what I was trying to get
Right.
to, a solution that would,
Yeah.
help the petitioner with his small business and yet not open up Pandora's box.
Right.
That would create unforeseen circumstances as the property changed hands.
And we have, Mr. Chairman, in the past, and this might be a question for the county attorney, allowed, or this body has adopted zoning changes with the additional restriction of removing certain uses from the district that would normally be permitted.
Yeah, that's a conditional zoning, and you can do that. As a general rule, we haven't done that. We've tried to keep them within the uses under the zoning code. But you could do outdoor storage suitable for business and remove the rest of the uses in there, which would very limited the use of the property. But that would be at his risk of rezoning that property to that use.
We'll see
So
how
does
this.
that have to go back to MPC with what you're saying? If we did that, would it have to still go back to
Probably be
MPC?
something you'd want to continue to the next meeting so that we can sit down and look at the verbiage to see
Right.
how well or not well
Yeah, I agree with
it'd be suited. And we'd be glad to meet with the MPC staff to work with them.
Would
Is
that
he
suit
gonna
what you're
incur
asking?
more costs for that?
Wait a minute. Would that suit what you're asking?
Well, I sense that, there's a resistance to go to this particular zoning today, and I'm just trying to find a
pathway.
solution, a path that would help out the petitioner and not have detrimental possible future effects on the neighborhood, so to speak.
Okay, now, Commissioner,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, so with that, whether it be a text amendment, because it almost seems like it changes, does that mean extra costs on him? Like, would he have to pay?
No, that would
No.
require just going back and we're sitting down and look at whether text amendment's a better idea, whether
Right.
conditional use zoning's a better idea, what kind of shape it would be in, and come back with a proposal that to consider rezoning and
Right.
within whatever the parameters end up being. And of course, the petitioner would need to have some final input, say, hey, I can't live with that, or yes, I'm willing to do that.
Well-
So that when we come here, we come with
And-
something that is
And he
sort
would
of
also have
recommend-
the option to say, no, I don't want any of that, I just want what I came here today for.
Correct.
And
And you
Come
can
out
rule
here
on that.
today and do what we did.
okay.
Well,
Did I get yours?
I will say, Mr. Chairman, and to my colleagues, I think that's one of the better courses of action, or that's what I would.
But we
hope
can't
for.
jump the fence yet.
I'm not trying to
All
jump the
right,
fence.
hold
I
it.
do want to say that this is different. This is really different.
Right.
This was a tough one.
Right. All right, you got yours in? Now let me go to Commissioner Adams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Larson, can we?
Yes, sir.
Also talk about the road? You said there were certain weight problems with the road.
Well, I wouldn't say that. What I would say is that when that road was created, it was created really to accommodate the residential traffic that exists there and for access to the Keller Flea Market. It wasn't created for, I think, some of the things that could be allowed under the proposed zoning.
Right.
Not necessarily the petitioner's business, but some other things that could be permitted under that district.
And that could be addressed with a more narrow.
If y'all,
Right.
you gotta remember now, Commissioner Adams had the floor.
Thank you, sir.
My
I
apologies.
would just say that we put that clause in there to say that he can't, or over a certain number of pounds can't be used on that road.
Well, if I may, Mr. Chairman, I think if the board, commission moves today to send this back to the MPC, one of the things that we'd likely do, in working with the county staff, is to tailor the language to any recommendation to limit the scale of the business that would be permitted at the site.
Right, that's what the attorney was telling us.
Yes, sir.
All right, did that get your question?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Thank you.
Commissioner Milton now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Lawson, is Ogeechee Road the only exit for this property, for this road?
Yes.
It doesn't exit out like going to where Sweetwater and all that is.
Correct, yeah, it enters, this property enters from Ogeechee, adjacent to the dollar store, if you know where that is. And then that road dead ends at the flea market.
Thank you.
All right, that's
No
it.
plans for expansion going further back?
No, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right, let's go back to Commissioner Farrell, yeah, something else? No. All right, now, the petitioner is here, and there's somebody else who signed up besides the petitioner?
No, no, sir.
All right, do you, come on,
I'd love to talk to you,
all right.
and I like the way y'all are talking on this so far.
All right.
And I'm open to.
That's what I
whatever-
want to ask you now.
Yes,
Because
and.
you
and-
brought us you gave us detailed picturing here, all right?
Yes, sir.
And what I understand, the consensus of this body is to go and work out the language so that we can get you to where you want to go?
Yes, sir.
All right, are you willing to do that?
Absolutely.
Okay, then what we will do then, now we will take the motion.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we table this item.
Or remand it to the MPC.
And remand it to the MPC for further discussion as far as options of wording or text amendment
Right.
or zoning.
I'll second that.
All right, so properly motion and second that we remand this back to the MPC and that we work with the legal staff to get the language that we're looking for. I got that correct?
Correct.
All right, thank you. All right, let's vote. 2. You beating yours up again? Okay, he's voting yes? Yes. Okay, his light's not coming on. So what we're gonna do now is just going back to MPC, and MPC is gonna get in with the petitioner, all right? And we craft the language so that we can get him to where he needs to be, all right?
Thank you. Appreciate
You're welcome. All right.
Y'all didn't want to see my slides today, huh?
No.
It's okay.
You may have to come back and bring them again, that's what I'm telling
Right
you.
on.
All right?
On. No worries. Thank
So-
you. Sherry's been listening in. She's out
All
of
right.
town, but she's been listening in on
Okay.
the proceedings.
Well, the staff will get with you as well as the MPC staff so we can craft it, okay?
Excellent. Thank
All
you.
right,
And
thank
if
you.
you got cable vision, it's on channel 16.
She ain't where she
All
got
right.
at. Kids are out of school. You figure
Do we
that one out.
do we have people signed up for number 4?
Yes, sir. We have 4 individuals.
We got 4? Okay. All right.
Thank you.
To repeal and replace the animal service ordinance, all right? Who's coming first? Dr.
Harper.
Harper's coming? Okay.
I just wanted to, I've got a PowerPoint that we can go over. Just real quick. I think it's working.
Click it twice.
Oh, yeah. Clicked it a couple times. There we
it
go.
is.
There we go. All right, I had it for the last meeting, so we just have to ignore the date that's on there today. Over the last couple of years, we've, animal welfare, first of all, I want to thank the commission for having me here today to look at this as soon as we can. Over the last several years, animal welfare is kind of a hard target to get to sometimes. It changes all the time. And since I've been at Animal Services, we've had a lot of changes in staff, we've had a lot of changes in procedures, we've had a lot of changes in all the different things that we do every day. So we started working with the community, a couple of groups in the community, and just the community at large, a lot of the rescue groups, to actually develop a little bit of a change in the ordinance that we use today. This first slide is just basically an overview of what field services officers do. I mean, we not only do we enforce county ordinance throughout the incorporated and some of the cities and municipalities, but we're also out on, we have an agreement with Hunter Army Air Force Base to go out there and help those guys. And part of our main focus is not only to enforce ordinance, but to educate the public, because there's still, I think that's, if we had to think about one of the main focuses that we need to really concentrate on is educating the public, because that's where, I think that's the big difference when you look at animal services things, but from the north and the south, especially more rural areas of Georgia. We've got to kind of get everybody on the same board. So this is like an outline of all the major ordinance changes that we have. I won't go through all these because I have slides for each one of them, but some of the big ones that we've come up with working with some of the groups. The first one's dogs must have 100 square feet of space. We respond to calls often where dogs are in kennels outside, they don't have enough space. In the past, because we have an inhumane treatment ordinance, which actually the officers can cite for inhumane treatment, that kind of encompasses everything, and I think that's what we'll find with the ordinance in general, is that while there may not be a specific ordinance against a specific thing, there are ways to go about that to enforce the ordinance to actually keep animals safe and to keep people safe. But we wanted to add this to make it a little bit clearer to the public that, hey, you can't have your dog in a small wire cage in the backyard, a crate in the backyard. It actually says that specifically in the ordinance, and I think you've got red line, but actually, it actually denotes that specifically, that they can't use a wire cage in the backyard. The other thing, we've had a tethering ban in Chatham County for a while, and when we define tethering as just specifically tying a dog out where one single point it's attached to, a tree, a stake in the yard, and then it's attached to the dog by a line. That's already been in place. We enforce that ordinance. We typically, that's one of the things we get pushback sometimes from the public is, why aren't we taking these dogs sometimes with tethering? There are a lot of reasons for people to temporarily tether their dogs. When we get phone calls about that, we actually can go out and we actually educate the public. We talk to them about specific things that they can do, whether they need to build a fence, whether they need to, use a trolley system, whatever. This ordinance actually designates all through there, has very specific requirements for the use of the trolley system. And I think having it in the ordinance is a little bit better. It makes it a little bit easier for officers to have to go out there rather than you go out there and spend 20, 30 minutes talking to somebody when they can look it up in the ordinance. There was a debate. The current ordinance does not allow invisible fences as a form of containment. A dog is considered at large if it's actually off their property. The Prevention of the Dangerous Dog Ordinance allows for us to go in, we can deal with dogs that will mess with invisible fences, but there are some neighborhoods in Chatham County where they allow invisible fences. And they can be restrictive for dogs, and they can help with, typically when you have well-behaved dogs, they can observe the invisible fence stuff. But I think having that makes it difficult for some properties where people have, they can't put fences in their front yard because of, the HOAs or whatever. So we just basically eliminated that. We had some calls about having the invisible fence. There's not a lot of areas in Georgia and across the country that I could find where they had limits on invisible fences. Now, if we have issues, we can address those issues. If we have a dog that doesn't observe his invisible fence, if we have a dog that's charging somebody in the front yard, we can address that issue with some of the other parts of the ordinance. Let's talk about mandatory spay-neuter dogs. When a dog comes into the shelter, whether it's a found at large dog or whether it's an impounded dog, we talk to the owners. Probably 80% of the dogs that we take in are not spayed or neutered. Cats typically the same way. I think I put them, I've got in there actually 70, but it's a large percentage of those dogs. We realize that spaying and neutering those dogs help prevent, spread of diseases. It's going to help prevent more dogs being made, but I think the biggest part of that is what can we do as a county ordinance to actually help with that. Initially, we started back with if your dog was impounded after 3 times, the 3rd time, you could not have your dog back before it was spayed or neutered. I think that's a little bit more lenient. We kind of tightened that up a little bit to move it back to 2. Now, that being said, that doesn't mean that we aren't having conversations with these. That's one of the public comments that we got is, should we offer free spay-neuter? Should we offer these different services? We work with all the rescue groups in Chatham County to actually get dogs spayed and neutered. We go out to, I've been out to homeless camps to talk about this, about, vaccinating dogs there and actually talking to them about spaying and neutering their dogs. So I think it's important that we have them spay and neuter. It's just we have to work within what we can do. And I think in the past, having dogs, having a dog spayed or neutered is going to decrease the amount that are coming into the shelter, but we have to work with the ordinance to do that. And that's a lot longer discussion than we can have. We talked about mandatory spay neuter. And I will say, there's been a push for that, and I've heard that from a lot of people in the public. The AVMA and the ASPCA both don't recommend that. And their thoughts are, on one hand, it's an expense. Do we have those services available in the community? Do we have low-cost spay neuter for those people that need it? Because those are the people that we engage with. We're not necessarily engaging with, the people that sleep with their dogs in the house. We're engaging with people that want to have a pet, but may not have the knowledge, may not have the resources to do some of the things that, somebody else may do. So there are a lot of options for low-cost spay neuters. Pet Fix is one of them. I think their capacity was, 8,000, something, 9,000. They have 3 vets there now. There's another, the Spay Alliance down off of 204. They're also there. We offer spay and neuter services, when we can at the shelter, so that can help with that too. I think the worry about increasing the mandate, the mandate of spay and neuter, one of the consequences to that would be that people that don't have the funds or just simply don't want to spay and neuter their dog, which I encounter every single day. Every single day I talk to people about, they don't have a reason, they just don't want to do it. And I think if you get to those people, then what you worry about is actually having people that don't go to the vet to have their dog reported as not spayed or neutered. They won't get basic services, they won't get rabies vaccines, those kind of things. So I think that's where we have to balance what we can enforce and what we can mandate with what effects it's going to have on the shelter, because every day I have 2 or 3 people that say, I'm not going to spay or neuter my dog. Well, you can't have it back, so guess where that goes? The dog ends up in the shelter, that we have to find another home for it, increases the capacity of the shelter and those kind of things. So it's a little bit, multiple things. Another one is just a clarification of the ASO duties, of the Animal Service Officer's duties. We get calls all the time about what the officer did, what they can do, what they can't do, and I think this part of the ordinance actually provides a guideline as far as like when an officer can impound a dog, when they may make a warning, when they may do something else, and it kind of gets that in the ordinance, so actually people can a little bit know eliminate some of the conversations that we may have to have, but it has it in the ordinance. Another big one that we see in Savannah and Chatham County all the time is dogs left in cars. It's hot here. I mean, I've had a couple, I've personally seen, I didn't live in Savannah, I lived in North Georgia. I had a veterinary friend of mine that she took her dog to the vet, walked in the door, there was tons of emergencies that were happening. She started working, and then within, at like 2 o'clock, she realized she'd brought a dog with her to that day. And it jumped out of the car and went up. Dog didn't die, but the dog was not in good shape. And this was in North Georgia in like October. So I think the biggest thing with this is the previous ordinance basically said it had to have adequate, sorry, I'm just blanking, had to have adequate ventilation, and the temperature needed to be low. This puts a specific limit on that. If it's over 79 degrees outside temperature based on just a weather forecast, and my officers will have actual temperature guns, they can determine that dog shouldn't be in the car. And the owner can be cited. And that doesn't necessarily mean the dog's removed and impounded. It just means that, hey, you're being cited for having your dog in the car. It's a potential danger. Even when you leave the dog in the car with the air conditioner on, things can happen. And I think that having that restriction is a big deal. The other issue that we have, and I think this kind of gets started some of the concerns we've had with people in the community and some of the commissioners, is we use the state code to classify dangerous dogs, which means there are 3 specific things, whether it causes a bite, causes a serious bite, or causes someone to fear for their life, those dogs can be classified. And what that means is they're classified as dangerous or vicious. There are certain restrictions that are put on this dog, whether it's, they have to be in a fence, they have to be spayed or neutered, they have to be microchipped, they have to be contained to prevent any future bite, and the owner may have to have insurance. Typically, a dangerous dog is $20,000, vicious is $50 and $100. So that misses some of the cases in between where it's like a dog's charging at somebody, charging at the mailman, or bites somebody on their property, or there's multiple cases of bites which that never actually get to that degree of classification, but could. And right now, there's not a lot, we can cite them, we can cite them for dog at large, but if the dog's, for whatever reason, there's not a dog at large, the dog's on a leash, they're walking it down the street and it attacks somebody, even though they're attached to a leash, they're not technically at large. So what this allows for, we already have in the ordinance, there's kind of prevention of dangerous dogs, where we can actually decide, okay, this dog could be a menace, we need to make sure it's in a fence in the backyard, it needs to be, wear a muzzle when it goes out in public. It needs to be spayed or neutered. There are a variety of different things that we can require just based on each situation. This actually gives us a little more teeth to that because it's not just us deciding this, but it goes back and it actually gives the owner a chance to appeal it, to say, hey, wait a minute, are you sure? And it brings in outside sources. It's just like with our dangerous dog hearings where you have someone with the health department, with a public service person, someone from animals, just a citizen at large, and someone from animal services that sits on that panel to decide. So it's not just one person deciding. The other thing is the stray hold for cats. Over the last 2 years, we've basically, with the TNVR program, we've actually decreased our cat intake significantly. I know that puts a stress on other people in the community with cats, but we're working with those. We try to work every day talking to people about what we can do differently to keep from euthanizing so many cats. Because of that, the stray hold has always been 3 days because there was a lot of turnover in cats. We all know what the turnover was. We won't speak about it today, but we can now by increasing the stray hold to 5 days, it basically makes everything equal. There's no confusion about what the stray hold is, whether it's a cat or a dog. The other part of the stray hold is we've allowed, trying to keep some of the pressure of overcrowding in the shelter. We've allowed, making it basically okay for people to keep stray dogs at home as long as they file lost dog or found dog reports, and they can actually do the stray hold at home. We track those, and we have a book at the shelter that actually, online that people can look for their lost dogs. They come to us, they look in the book, the dog's us, and we can connect them with them. So it's kind of a two thing. It keeps dogs out of the shelter. The other thing that was a little vague in our previous ordinance was there was no definition for adequate veterinary care. I'm not going to read it out loud here. I'm a veterinarian, and I think that there are certain things that you have to give your dog if you're going to have it. And I think having it there also kind of adds that, it's an educational piece. They read that, they can see it. Some may think it doesn't go that far, but I think there's basic veterinary care that all dogs need, all dogs and cats need. That's the end.
All right, any questions for Dr. Harper? Commissioner Adams and then Commissioner Whiteley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With the heat part of this.
Right.
And you say that the officers can take the temperatures, say the temperature is 100 degrees and you can't find the owner of the vehicle. Can the officers do whatever they have to do?
Yes, they can.
Okay, like break windows?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and who's responsible for that, the property owner?
Yeah, typically the property owners. I mean, what typically happens is my officers don't do that. They actually, they get police involved.
Okay.
So a police department comes out, they decide whether they're gonna break into the car, and then that's handled that way.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah, and if the dog's in stress, then it goes to a veterinarian, whether it's me or whoever.
And one other thing, are the owners cited for that?
They are cited for, that's what the citation is. It's animal left in car. That can progress to neglect and cruelty as well. So it just depends on the severity of what's going on with the dog.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Commissioner Whiteley?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the presentation, Dr. Harper. When you spoke about the shelter, roughly how much per day, if you had to kind of estimate, does it cost to house a dog in our shelter?
So if you talk about employees, I think we'd calculate daily. We're probably, per dog, we're probably like $10, $15 a day.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Any other? All right, now let's have Ms. Milson.
Thank you, sir. Cats. I got a cat lady. And she doesn't like the cats, and she doesn't like them crossing in her yard. So are they considered stray cats?
It depends on, typically, yeah. I mean, they may be stray, but they may not necessarily be a nuisance.
They're a nuisance to her.
Exactly. And so typically, the way those calls are handled is if we have a nuisance complaint about cats, we first go out and try to find out, well, somebody's feeding those cats. Whether it's her neighbor, somebody in the neighborhood's feeding those cats. We try to work with that person to try to figure out how do we keep the cats off your property. If we can't keep the cats off your property, someone can be cited for nuisance. If they're not going to cooperate, if the person feeding the cat doesn't cooperate, they can be cited for nuisance. Once they're cited for nuisance, that's where we can go in, okay, do we need to remove these cats? Do we need to put these cats somewhere else? In most cases, not all cases, but in most cases that we've dealt with where we've had issues with stray cats, we like to call them community cats, we can work up something that we don't actually have to impound those cats. We don't have to remove those cats. We've worked in a lot of different neighborhoods where we've done that. There's gonna be the ones, the one-offs where they have a problem. Typically, we work with those and, in just individual cases, we try to figure out what we can do that best serves everybody.
Well, you may have gone out
Yeah.
to speak to this person because I did ask for some help on this.
Yes, I'm familiar with who you're talking about. Yeah,
Sugar
we're
mill.
working with them right now. It's a little different because we're not really sure who's feeding those cats. But if we need to, and that's, in cases, and a lot of times they're not like feral cats, they're friendly cats that people are taking in that just have gotten out of control. And typically, in most situations, spaying and neuter those cats and feeding them, instead of feeding them close to the property that the person's having a problem, if you feed them somewhere else, they don't come over there anymore. So we've had successes that way, and I think that's where we're looking to do with this one too.
And because I think she went out and spent some money to do her yard to keep them from around there. And then her other issue was we spay or neuter the cat and we put them back on the street. And they were stray when you picked them
Well,
up.
they're not technically stray. What's happening is there's somebody that has taken responsibility to feed those cats. So there's a difference between like just stray. Like we're talking, that's what the kind of the clarification is community cats. And someone's taking care of those cats. Whether it's they started out living in somebody's house and they just went out and they started breeding with other cats. That's where we work to stop the breeding part of it. They still want to feed these cats because somebody wants to take care of them. They need to take care of them in a way that doesn't infringe on everybody else. And that's where we're working at. We actually, when people call us, we have solar repellers. We have, all kinds of different devices that we can use to help repel cats when people call us. So we have those that we typically will let people, hey, use these for a couple of weeks, see how it works. If it works, give it back to us. You can get your own, or there's been plenty of times we've just given solar repellers. They make these weird little spiky things that you can put on top of your fence so that cats won't jump over the fence, those kind of things. So we have those at the shelter that people can come and get.
So have you got a recommendation for my person?
Yeah, we're working on that because that's where I would tell you that I know the officer went out and we're still trying to figure out exactly where they're feeding because my understanding was someone from the end of the road was feeding the cat, was coming there to feed the cats. And all you really have to do is start slowly feeding these cats, back them up and feed them on your property, they'll stay there.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, anyone else over here? All right, Commissioner Whiteley.
One other question I have about the ordinance itself, section 22-305, the Animal Control Board. Do you, and I think this might be a question for you, Dr. Harper, as well as staff, do you think it may be out of form or shape to expand it to 5 members? I see currently it's 3 members, one, you, somebody from DPH, or excuse me, the State Board of Health.
Well, that's one of the things we need to go back in. Dr. Rustin actually emailed me yesterday. It should say the County Board of Health, not State Board of Health. State Board doesn't do this, it's county.
All right.
Yeah.
And then one citizen, and maybe we could have a little more citizen involvement in that board. I'm assuming this is who's hearing, well, yeah, based on this is who's gonna be hearing some of those appeals and things of that nature. And I'm concerned that we have ultimately 2 bureaucrats and then 1 citizen, theoretically.
No,
So,
that's definitely something that could,
Yeah,
I don't typically sit on the board just because I know a lot of the information. I'm directly involved, because typically what these hearings are, my dog bit you, you're pretty severely, and we're trying to figure out, should the dog be classified or not? And so I have heard both sides. So I typically allow we typically pull somebody that's from the shelter that does those things to be impartial. And the county, the attorney that does the hearing officer, she's there too. But yeah, I don't see, we have some issues sometimes getting a citizen at large just because these can be some pretty terrible things that happen.
gotcha.
so they don't, and, ultimately, with danger, I mean, I don't think I'm speaking out of turn here, when your dog's classified dangerous or vicious, some of the actual things that are put on, like the actual requirements to get certificate, to get a license, to be able to keep the dog are pretty severe, and a lot of these dogs aren't kept. A lot of these dogs are euthanized. So I think that turns off some of the public, the citizens at large who want to be involved in decisions that may or may not have result in something like that. But yeah, I definitely think it would be open to having, I think stay in an odd number, but yeah.
That's all?
Yeah, so, well, that's a recommendation.
Right, yeah.
I'm finished.
Okay. Here's what you do. Write up your recommendation and give it to staff so they can take it through legal so we can move that, okay? Then we can advance it to where you want it to be. All right? Anything else from Dr. Harper now? Okay, let's have those who sign up to speak. Start with the first person that you have. All right, please, when you come up, state your name and address.
I'm Marvis Henson, and yes, I'm the one that Mrs. Milton has been talking about.
Got to talk louder in the mic.
Okay. And so that is not what has been happening. In fact, my first conversation with animal control was that they simply come out, pick up the cats, spay, neuter, and return them to where they are. And that was the only solution that they gave me at that time. And so that is why it's been so annoying, because it has been quite expensive for me. And these cats just don't pass through my property. They leave their excrement, which I have to go out and clean up. And maybe to somebody else it wouldn't be such a problem, but I do my own yard. So it's not so good to be out on your hands and knees, and there's cat excrement that you have to clean up. And so that is why I've been in contact with all of these persons, including the assistant county manager, for the last over a month or so. And so, yes, it's been expensive. I've spent about $300 in the past couple of weeks trying to find some type of repellent. The sprays and powders, after it rains, they have to be reapplied. So then I came upon these solar-powered units that I placed out, and they're not 100% because I just ran a cat out of my yard yesterday, and as I was coming around back to the front where I had a planted bed, then there was excrement. So that's not 100%. So my thing is, I just need some help in getting rid of them. I'm not a pet owner, don't particularly care for pets, otherwise I'd have some. So I just don't want to have to go out and have to clean up their excrement every day. And that is what has been happening.
And Dr. Harper said that they're going to work with you to try to find out who's feeding them.
Well, I got one.
Because those cats will go away if somebody
Yes, and I gave them information. The person from Animal Control who called me, I told them exactly where they had been feeding. And the house at 101 Sugar Mill, well, whatever.
Yeah, please,
That
here's what I'm saying to you. You give it to them, but you got to also remember there's a privacy issue.
Okay.
So if you give it to them, then they can investigate, right, and do.
Well, she called me back later and said nobody answered. But if a car is in the driveway, that person is at home. I know that because that's the street I live on. Yes.
Sometimes my car can be in the driveway.
No, this
You can
person
ring my
is
doorbell all
elderly,
you want. I ain't gonna
and if
answer.
that car is there,
I'm just telling.
then she's at home.
Honestly, I'm just being honest with you.
Sure.
Okay. I'm just being honest with you because I have the same problem you had. Okay. A person moved on the street after the folks in the house across the street died. They brought one cat. Just one. Now we got 15. Yeah. All right. And so they all over our yard. Okay, and all over my wife. My wife gets on her nerve all the time. She can smell it quicker than I can. All right, but What I'm saying to you is Dr. Harper is gonna work with you, all right, to see if we can come to a solution to your problem.
Sure.
All right?
Mhm.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Say that I have observed people coming from other neighborhoods feeding animals in where they don't live.
Right.
So it's gonna be difficult to find out who's feeding them because they come in a car and they'll drop food off and they'll go back to where they live. And
Right.
that animal was fed right there, so it stays right there. So.
And we know that it happened because I know the person who do that. I do. Honestly, I do.
Mr. Chair, I have a
Oh,
question.
I'm sorry.
Thank you, sir. So we're spaying and neutering them and releasing them?
Listen, last commission, we had a day and a half of arguments about killing cats.
Okay.
And we were the top killers in the state. All right, so I don't think we want to go there. All right, yes, sir. We've been through that before. All right, that's how we adopt a new thing.
Ms. Carroll requested that I go first.
Pull the mic down to you. State your name and
I'm
where
just
you live.
well, so I'm Brittany McLaughlin. Ms. Carroll requested that I go first, so that's why we're
That's
not
fine.
in the
Just state your
appropriate
name
order.
and your address.
In Coffee Bluff Plantation. Prefer not to give my exact address if that's okay. I am here on behalf of both somebody in the veterinary field and in rescue. I am the medical director for Renegade Paws Rescue. I wanted to hear what Dr. Harper had to say. I'm really glad to hear a lot of the things that he is looking and items he's looking to change with regard to updating the ordinances. In particular, spay and neuter. I can very much appreciate his point that if we try to make that a required thing, then you in turn risk having people not be willing to go to a vet because then they're not being willing, they don't want to be found out that their animal is not spayed and neutered. To that end, I think that there are responsible ways to do it. There are exceptional ways both in the north and over on the west coast, and I don't think we're quite there. I think that's too far ahead of us. But I like the fact that we are trying to make progress there. As a representative of Renegade and the fact that we touched on low-cost spay and neuter, we have actually expanded our community program to cover spay and neuter for anyone that needs it in the community at no cost. We cover that for them. The benefits there are more than I can even touch on. They're both health of the animal, health of the community. Obviously, we have community members that are having issues with, and then there's that differentiation of an owned animal, a community pet, a stray pet. I think one of the things that is important to mention there is, as far as touching on, is the quantity of animals. So with spay and neuter, what you're looking at, part of that is population control. Animals, and I went to a national conference this summer with the Best Friends Humane Society, Best Friends Animal Society. There was a joke made there in one of the lectures that what is the only thing they do better in the South than anywhere else, and that is treat heartworms. And unfortunately, that is due to lack of care that we have become so good at having to treat a problem. And so what I would like for us to eventually be able to do is not have our shelters be beyond capacity, not have to stress what we can pull from them to help them, but rather be able to work in a better capacity of control and management. And I agree that the 3-strike rule definitely needs to be amended. I can appreciate that we're looking at if your animal has been in the shelter and it is not altered, it is time for it to be altered. I think it's also important to look at what animals we're seeing in the shelter that are unaltered, that are being returned to their owners. Part of that, and we can't avoid it, is pit bulls. Pit bulls are most people's, you either love them or you hate them. And the problem there, and I have seen it in particular in the last few months as we've done a lot more community outreach, is people with intact pit bulls always think that they have a special one that they need to breed because of this, and I'm sure everybody feels that way and everybody wants that about their dog, but we have to make sure that they are doing that responsibly. If you have purchased this animal that you think is a grade A to be reproduced and all of that, then you should also with that obtain the appropriate licensing. And there should be an expense to that, and that would encourage appropriate animal care. With Renegade, we have pulled roughly 58% of the animals pulled from Chatham County Animal Shelter so far this year. I know there are multiple groups of us that do pull from them. Have I had a chance to speak to them on some of these matters? Absolutely not. Part of the reason I am here today is I had the honor of meeting Commissioner last night at the town hall meeting in Windsor, and he asked if I could come today and listen and see how I feel. So I appreciate the chance to be able to talk to you guys. Part of that, it's not even just the shelter, but is owner surrender animals. So animals that aren't even going to the shelter because they can't. They're at capacity. We are too. We are a volunteer organization, but until we have more rules for people with their animals, that it's just progressive and cyclical, and it will continue to happen as long as it's so easy to obtain an animal and have an animal when you want it, and so easy to get rid of it when you don't. And so easy to discard the responsibilities that come with being an animal owner, or rather not discard them, but put them off on someone else. And so what we're striving to do right now is to offer, again, it's not just that we offer free spay and neuter. We offer free microchips. We just partnered with Animal Control, SEMA, and Parks and Recreation a couple of weeks ago to do a free rabies and a free microchip clinic. Microchips are important to responsible pet ownership and returning pets back to their owners. I also work, as I mentioned, in veterinary medicine. I recently had a situation where an animal was hit. He was an intact male. I can almost guarantee why he was out and about and was brought to our facility by a police officer. So this is a police officer that responded to a Good Samaritan that wanted to do the right thing, brought it to our facility. The owner wouldn't pay and wouldn't come to the facility. Then the police officer's supervisor showed up. Now we have 2 officers off the street with an animal that no one will speak for, but we can't take it in our facility in a veterinary capacity. That has to go through the appropriate channels of the shelter. These are just all things that until I feel like changes are made, again, with regard to responsibility, then we are costing ourselves and our community more. If we could just reallocate, reclassify, and require responsibility of owners. I love Chatham County. I love Savannah, Georgia. I am from here. I have moved away. I have lived elsewhere, and I have come back. However, how we are with animals as far as the responsibility factor, unfortunately, borderline's repugnant. We require so much more in so many capacities, and it can't just be a matter of this cat is in the way, why is someone feeding it? If there is a hungry child, someone feeds it. If there's a hungry animal, someone feeds it. Do not condemn that. Let's condemn why it's here and how we can appropriately reallocate those animals, put them in a better spot so that they're not affecting her garden and that they're not doing this. And that is what we are trying to do. For me, as a rescue organization, that is hard. As we all know, resources are finite, and so we have had over 2,400 intakes since our inception in the middle of, in May of 2019. As I stated, this last year alone, up until this point, we have pulled 58% of animals from Chatham County. We also have had 400 intakes of owner surrender animals that were just Chatham County, out of our 600 owner surrender that we have taken in. Those are big, scary numbers. There is even a chart called Big Scary Numbers. And in particular, it talks about cats and how intact animals, but it's not just one thing or the other. I think what's important for us to all understand is that it's a community thing, and it has to start with rules and accountability. We cannot say that we require your animal to do this, but when you see it, nothing happens. When you see someone not doing it, nothing happens. And so I am excited for us to work with anyone that will give us time of day to make anything better for animals and for our community. Nobody wants to see these dogs end up in a shelter or in a rescue. We want to see these animals, cats and dogs, stay with their families. And we want these community pets to be well taken care of, but in an appropriate way. We don't want to, we have recently started taking on cats as well, just because there was such a community need. And out in particular in our community program with regard to going out and vaccinating, spaying, neuter, microchipping, or having our veterinary partners participate in that. And there's just no such thing as accidental litters. When intact animals are out and about, litters will happen. An intact animal will get pregnant if with another one. That's not an accident. And that's what's important. We have, I think, the community, like Dr. Harper mentioned, you don't want to deter somebody from anything, but if you show them that they have the right support channels and the stuff is there, but that's also, one small group can't do that. We have to do that together. And I am just excited for anything that we can do moving forward. And if I can take this moment now that you guys did just talk about it, Commissioner Whiteley's recommendation for additional members, I think that's wonderful. I would love to see more, a citizen representing, or even maybe somebody in the rescue community, somebody that chooses to do this. It's not their job. We have over 600 volunteers in our program right now. 2 people get paid. And those 2 people only get paid because they quit their paying job to do this. And they don't get paid near enough. But that means we have 598 plus humans that give their personal time every day to try to work on this project. There are resources, there are things you can use. We just have to let people know, and we have to come together on a common ground on what we can do moving forward. That's it for me.
Any questions? All right, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you for your time.
All right, next.
Okay. I don't know if it was good or bad that she went before me, because now she's gotten kind of worked up about a couple of topics. All right. My name is Carol Hammock Williamson. I live in Windsor Forest. I began the group Speaking Loudly and Often for Animals 7 years ago. We're known by SLOA, S-L-O-A. I don't know if I like the way that sounds, but in actuality, things do tend to move really slow at a snail's pace in what we try to address. One more thing about me, so you'll know that I am a volunteer in this community that is spending every day of every week to try to improve the situations that are in our community. I not only run SLOA, which is like a full-time job, I also created a neighborhood group, Windsor Forest Home Sweet Home, that has grown to over 1,600 residents and members in Southside Savannah. We are looked at by the city of Savannah as a neighborhood association, which I just don't choose to go through that process, even though the mayor and everyone would like for me to do that, and our alderman Curtis Purdy out there. But we're doing a lot of good things out there as if we are an association. I spend time on that. I also created Windsor Forest Lost and Found Pets on social media. So we have that very active page, and believe you me, it's very active with roaming, unaltered many times, dogs in our area. So that just gives you a little background that I am a volunteer. I don't need to stand here and defend taking your time or what I have to say. This is my passion, and I work with some true experts that know their stuff, much more than I do, all right? And we have definitely joined forces with Georgia Companion Animal Advocacy, run by the president, and Allball. I wish she was here at the moment, but she's actually out of the country until, I think, coming back this Sunday. All right, I'm going to begin with... It began slow in 2015. In 2015, SLOA was discussing adding the temperature to be taken for dogs left in unattended parked cars. That's how long ago we began that topic. I have an email here written to who was then a commissioner, Helen Stone. See, she's not here today. Helen Stone received this email back in 2015. All right, also, let's see, County Manager Lee Smith. And in here, I was assured that that was going to be seriously considered at that time. Yeah. Well, since 2015, that has been discussed also with Dr. Harper directly. Many conversations. And as recent as in May of 22, the proposed updated ordinance at that time, he still had not agreed to add a temperature of a maximum temperature that could be allowed for a dog to be left unattended in a parked car. And this is a bigger issue than you can realize. May 22, he still hadn't. Now he finally has. But see, we've been working on this since 2015. Okay, he's finally put that in there. But what hasn't been done is we are not fine-tuning the wording of that section so that you do not have loopholes. And I'm going to give you an example of a particular loophole that was sent out to Helen Stone, Al Scott, and Edna Jackson was the mayor at that time. All right. In this email, they are giving an example of something happened where a person like myself that was concerned about a dog left unattended on a very hot day, that person ended up witnessing that dog taking the last breath. By the time, she'd called 911 immediately. Takes everybody forever to get to these kind of situations. So if you've got to wait on animal services and on 911 and them for scratch their head, are they going to break the window or whatever they're going to do to save this dog? Well, this dog did die, and I've got it documented in this email. All right, and in this email, I stated then in 2015 that we needed to add the temperature range, if nothing else. Besides that, the wording, you cannot have such generalized wording that can be misinterpreted. You can't say proper or adequate ventilation. The police officer that came out after the dog had died, before he got there, told the person that called them there was nothing they could have done anyway because proper ventilation, a window was cracked. These are the kind of things I've been facing. All right, so like I said, Lee Smith emailed to me, guarantees me that was going to be addressed then. All right, let's put that aside. Also, Lee Smith at that time, here at 2015 again, I asked, I would like to be included in any conversations about our local ordinance. I gave him information of how even before I began SLO, I had been involved with other groups of persons to discuss the ordinance. And at one time, we were successful at that time. We used to have our meetings at the Humane Society, actually. And we were successful at that time, before 2015, to get tethering, for example, completely taken out of the ordinance. There was no cable line, whatever. It was like all out. We were ecstatic. That didn't last too long before that was put back in. We also got the dogs in the open rear trucks, ended at that time. Now you have the wording where they have to be secured, but even though you do still see, dogs unsecured in the back of a pickup truck, and I always wonder, does Animal Services ever speak, like I do, directly to our SPD as to, are they pulling people over when they see this? I'd love to see a record. Has anybody ever been fined for having that dog loose in the back of a pickup? So I feel like there needs to be communication like SLOA has with SPD about such items as that. All right, so, all right, I do want to say, and then, okay, I do want to say that SLOA and myself, we are appreciative that certain items have finally been, put in this new proposed ordinance, such as the temperature range, such as increasing the enclosed space that a dog can be confined to outside to no less than 100 square feet. Well, guess what? That requirement had been in the city ordinance all this time, but the county ordinance read that the enclosed space an animal could be kept in outside had to just be big enough to stand up, turn around, lay down. I would tell Dr. Harper, how in the world can you, as the director of our animal services, think that that is okay? And I had a neighbor out in Windsor Forest, and this video went viral in the news and on social media. A dog was being kept in a wire cage, which is also not allowed, small in the backyard, in the sun. And it turns out all the calls that were made to that property, turns out Dr. Harper was not enforcing the city ordinance of the requirement, excuse me, of 100 square feet. He was going by the completely outrageous county ordinance that says that was okay as long as that dog could stand up, turn around, lay down. So I'm looking at your faces right now, and I'm feeling pretty confident that you wouldn't think that that is appropriate animal keeping of an animal. All right. A second item. Another item SLO has been working on for so many years. Other communities have gotten this in their ordinances, and for the life of me, I don't understand why Chatham County fights against that, and that is to end the sales, outdoor sales of animals. So we're talking about people can't stand on the street corner with the trunk of their car open selling animals, or in their front yard, or in a parking lot. But guess what? It also includes, we need to end animal sales at flea markets, such as Keller's. SLOA has got a file cabinet full of reports that people make to us of sickly animals that they have purchased from Keller's flea market that are coming from breeders being allowed by the owners of Keller's flea market, who know me well. They've banned me from their social media because I would give some pretty rotten reviews along with other people. Keller's flea market, this is a fact that I can provide you with the paperwork. They allow breeders that have been several years on HSUS, the United States Humane Societies. They call it annual Horrible 100 list of breeders. They go in undercover investigation, okay? The names of breeders. It is a fact. I have the proof. I told Keller's. They ignored it. I told Harper and I have had this conversation. In fact, he even admitted to me that he had, and I have this conversation between us here today, he even told me before he got the position of director, apparently he must have purchased an animal at Keller's flea market, because what he told me, he said he had a personal experience himself of sickly animals being coming from Keller's flea market. And we talked then, this goes back like when he first took the director position, 2017, 2018. So Keller's flea market has new owners, okay? So I talked sometime with Deborah Berger and others that are with the United States Humane Society, and they try their best to get me to get more involved with them, but I stick excuse me, I stick to SLOA and kind of do my own thing, you know. But they are very supportive and very appreciative of what SLOA does, because we have a lot of followers, a lot of members that are in support, because we are not extreme in what we ask. We truly are very reasonable, and we do a lot of research of what other areas are doing and what they have in their ordinance. And in actuality, Chatham County, Savannah should have the most wonderful worded ordinance that would be admired from afar. In fact, people are really rather surprised that our ordinance isn't better as a good example for others, because some other smaller communities are really beating us on being more progressive in what they're putting in their ordinances. But so Keller's flea market situation and just animal sale, roadside sales is something that we've spoke about. I wrote letters to the editor and to Savannah News. That was even before I started SLOA many years back. So I've been addressing this topic for a long time.
Can you bring this to a head, please?
What's that?
Can you bring it to a head?
It's probably been brought here.
Your time's running out. That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
Your time
All right.
is running out.
Okay, well, let me move on then real quickly.
Because I'm going to bring it to a head.
Okay. All right. Third item would be you need to look at the number of animals that's being allowed per residence and look to the reasoning behind that, why such a large number of animals is being allowed per residence. You could have exemptions for persons that have farmland, for example, or even maybe exemptions for some of the rescue group fosters that sometimes end up with a larger number. But in general, the number of animals being allowed per residence is questionable. Item 4, we feel very strongly about this, as Anne Marie with Georgia Companion Animal Advocacy does. The exemption status, giving the Director of Animal Services, Dr. Harper, the power whether to enforce a section of an ordinance or not, needs to be removed. Instead, it needs to be required that he, on minimum, would give a written warning. That type of exemption status is found nowhere else in the state of Georgia. So for transparency to the public, we need to see at least written warnings that would be given, not just exempt something. Let's see here. All right. The state law loophole, which allows 1 litter. We have got this huge situation with backyard breeding, is what we call here in Savannah. We call out animal services, someone's in possession of, usually it's a pit bull, with the pit bull puppies. Animal Services goes out and nothing's really done because of that state law. Well, that could actually be closed with some local regulations, because what happens is you're allowing that 1 litter. No follow-up by Animal Services is done to know where those now 10, 12 puppies go, or to the person that did that oopsie breeding as to what else might continue to happen. So there's really no follow-up there.
All right, I must bring you to a head, and I thank you for your presentation, all right?
Okay,
All right, you
well,
must move along.
I just want you to
Yes,
realize.
no, ma'am, understand me now.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Who's next? Is that it? All right, Mr. Gentry.
Good afternoon, Mr.
Good afternoon.
Chairman and Commissioners. Thank you for your time. I want to touch on just 2 very brief things. A specific in the proposed ordinance change regarding the temperature, with all due respect to the previous speakers. Setting a certain temperature threshold is pretty asinine, in my opinion. If you look at what other groups point out, there have been children that have died in cars at 57 degrees ambient temperature. The Georgia Department of Driver Safety says to never willingly leave a child or pet in a vehicle unattended. Even with the windows cracked, it only takes minutes for the temperature to go up. included in the proposed ordinance change is a chart showing that at 70 degrees within half an hour, it can go up to 110 degrees in a vehicle. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration says if you see a child alone in a locked car, get them out immediately and call 911. They don't make any reference to a temperature threshold. It is crazy to put that limitation. Any animal, any child left in a vehicle unattended is inappropriate. The American Academy of Pediatrics released a study showing that whether the window is cracked or not, it makes no difference at the speed at which the temperature rises in the vehicle. Even at 70, 72 degrees, which is well below the 79 degrees proposed change in the ordinance, that temperature will be in dangerous levels well within an hour, if not within half an hour. I think that we are missing the point in helping to protect animals in our community with the way that portion is worded. My second thing I wanted to bring up is related to Mr. Adams' inquiry concerning community cats, and I think the big picture here is we all want fewer cats out there. The lady in Mrs. Milton's community that's struggling with these cats, I think she would agree. She wants fewer cats. I want fewer cats. I think all of us in the community would prefer fewer cats roaming our streets and creating conflict in our community. The only solution that has been proven to work has been trap, neuter, vaccinate, and release programs. Any other attempts, shooting them, poisoning them, relocating them, none of that has worked. They come back. Those cats are there because that's the cat's home. They are thriving there. They wouldn't be reproducing at the rate they were if they were not thriving there. There are probably individuals feeding them and contributing, and that's not always an easy thing to navigate, especially when there's a conflict with neighbors. But sterilizing them, vaccinating them, reduces their population over time, protects the public health by reducing the disease that they carry and can spread, both for the cat's sake and also for the human's sake, because it reduces exposure to diseases like rabies or ringworm by having those cats healthy and sterilized. That said, I want to take a moment to mention an upcoming event through the Humane Society and Pet Fix, where there will be a unlimited feral cat, community cat sterilization day, an event where basically the current reality is Pet Fix caps the number of cats that an individual or a rescue group can bring in because of just logistics. But on October 27th, there's actually going to be, I think, what is going to be called Traptoberfest, a special event where unlimited community cats can be brought in and be sterilized at discounted or, in a lot of cases, free cost for our residents in our community if they're within the Chatham County area. So I just wanted to let y'all know about that upcoming thing, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anybody else? That was the last one? All right, may I have a motion to repeal and replace the animal service ordinance?
Mr. Chairman, and in lieu of actually doing the repeal, I'm going to ask that make a motion that we table this so we could kind of review the things that were just given to us, the potential changes, and then try to bring it up at a later date.
Properly motion and second that we table the animal to repeal and replace the animal service ordinance. Are you ready for the question? Please vote. Okay. All right, moving on. Information item. All right, the only information item we have is that the Chatham County Sheriff's Office invites our community to flock together to support the fight against breast cancer. Throughout the month of October, you can surprise your family or friends with a lawn full of brightly colored pink flamingos for a donation of $40. The Flamingo crew will deliver 10 flamingos to an unsubscribed lawn where they will be rooted in the ground for 1 week. After the flock comes to a full flourish, all right, the sheriff will then office will then pick up. In order to, if you want to be a part of this, please call the sheriff office at 912-652-7632, all right? It is Savannah State's homecoming, that's why I'm dressed like I am, all right? And I invite all the commissioners now to meet me on the field tomorrow at halftime at Savannah State University, okay?
And may I add one thing? please,
Yes.
In closing, we have a gentleman here, Mr. Lindsey Streeter. He's bringing a professional basketball team to Savannah. Unfortunately, the name is the Hurricanes. And I'd just like to just say hello to him, and we're gonna be working to bring a permanent team here in Savannah.
All right.
First game in Savannah will be the 22nd of this month at Beach High School.
Okay.
I can't go, but
Don't go there. All right, there is a need for us to go into executive session for litigation, personnel, or acquisition. All right, may I have a motion?
Motion.
So move.
Clear the board.
Second.
Clear the board. All right, properly motion second that we adjourn to executive session. Please vote. All right.